Chapter 316. Lin Fengting returned to Switzerland. The Lin clan kept their promises. For hundreds of years, the Lin clan rarely promised anything seriously. But once they made a promise, they would never fail to fulfill it. Lin Fengting promised to lend the sword to Qin Weibai, so this sword strike could not be fake. A sword strike with all his strength. The strongest sword strike. This sword strike could do a lot of things. If he unsheathed the sword without any scruples, he could kill an invincible realm expert, block the sword Emperor Wang Tianzong, and contend with the most mysterious god in the purgatory of heaven capital. This sword was unsheathed at the most critical moment, and it was even enough to change the general trend. If he wanted to change the general trend, he must understand the general trend. So after returning to Switzerland, Lin Fengting had been studying the information of the dark world. At the same time, he was slowly adjusting his state. The headquarters of the Lin clan really stood aloof from the world. They didn't even have the most basic intelligence organization. But the branches of the Lin clan were all over the world, and there were many wealthy families that could participate in the game of the dark world. Although the headquarters of the Lin clan rarely contacted the branches, they were not really inseparable. At least when Lin Fengting needed intelligence, the major branches would report the information to Lin Fengting as soon as possible. It was late at night in Switzerland. The light was still on in Lin Fengting's study. The luxurious and spacious desk was full of documents. Folders, videotapes, text materials, and video materials were all placed in front of Lin Fengting. Lin Wuxia, the heir of the Lin clan, sat opposite Lin Fengting and accompanied his father to look through the mountain of materials. The chaos in the dark world today was no secret. It was completely clear at a glance. All the superpowers were caught in a bitter fight. People died every day. Almost all the superpowers fell into a strange circle where they wanted to win but couldn't win. They wanted to retreat but didn't dare to retreat. Now, it would seem that all of the superpowers were bracing themselves to hold on. But the more Lin Fengting looked, the more confused he became. Because in his eyes, the situation today was really chaotic. There was no logic or pattern in the chaos. That was the reality. But it was completely different from what he had expected. Qin Weibai told him when she was in Australia that the Samsara Palace had been psychologically prepared for everything today. If this sentence was interpreted from another perspective, it was the Samsara Palace who had planned everything today. Even if they didn't have the ability to control the entire situation, they were definitely one of the main forces behind the scenes. At the very least, they were able to anticipate all of this, and they would definitely have made sufficient preparations for everything that happened today. But Lin Fengting did not see any preparation from Samsara Palace. Like other forces, the Samsara Palace was also losing, holding on, and consuming. Moreover, because of their short appearance and lack of foundation, the Samsara Palace could even be said to have suffered the heaviest losses. In 3 years, 3 medium-sized consortiums attached to the Samsara Palace in Europe had been destroyed, and more than half of an elite force codenamed Samsara had been lost. As for the rewards, Lin Fengting stared at it for a long time. But he really didn't see what Samsara Palace had gained in the past 3 years. Not being able to tell was what puzzled him the most. He didn't know what the Samsara Palace wanted to do, nor did he know what benefits the Samsara Palace would get if it continued to develop like this. Was it because the Samsara Palace had been prepared, but the current situation made their preparation completely ineffective, or was it because of something else? Lin Fengting put down the document and took a sip of tea. The tea was already cold. It was a little bitter when it entered his mouth, but it was refreshing. What do you think? Lin Fengting looked at Lin Wuxia sitting opposite him and suddenly asked. Obviously, the situation is completely out of control. Lin Wuxia held the document in his hand. The purgatory of heaven capital has pinned down a considerable part of the Wang family of Beihai in Annan State. Although Beihai province is calm, their overseas forces have suffered heavy losses in the past 3 years. Nearly 30 intelligence agencies of the Wang family of Beihai in Europe and America have been destroyed, and a wealthy family attached to them has betrayed them. Kunlun City is even worse. The forces they have established overseas over the years have almost been wiped out. The entanglement between the Dark Knights and Knights Templars is actually the Vatican's suppression of the Dark Knights. But the escalating battle between them has aroused the dissatisfaction of the Shadow Throne. The Shadow Throne in Europe is an official agency. Although it is to deal with the Black Ghost in Africa, it does not rule out the possibility of intervening in the battle between the Vatican and the Dark Knights. In America, the fantasy world has joined forces with the Men in Black of Star State to resist Kunlun City, but the appearance of the Shadow Throne makes them hesitate. While they preserve their strength, they also give Kunlun City time to entangle with them in Star State. So the Men in Black in the fantasy world have begun to have opinions about the Jiang family of South America that invited the Black Ghost. And all kinds of signs show that the attitude of the Heroes Club is very ambiguous. There seems to be a deal between them and the Jiang family of South America. Lin Yuxian recalled the information that could not be more chaotic dully and said with a wry smile, "At present, there are battlefields almost everywhere. The Polar Ground Alliance in Snow Country has recently had serious internal strife. It is said that the activities of the Samsara Palace have been found in Snow Country. In Europe, it is the battle between Knights Templars and the Dark Knights. The Vatican is involved, the Shadow Throne is covetous, and the Samsara Palace stands with the Dark Knights to fight against the Vatican. But there are also shadows of Kunlun City, the fantasy world, and the Jiang family of South America. The Men in Black is the official organization of Star State. At present, they seem to have their eyes on Kunlun City, but they also have ideas about the Shadow Throne, so they have frequent contact with the Samsara Palace. Recently, some masters have appeared in the camp of the Samsara Palace. They seem to come from the purgatory of Heaven Capital, but the masters of the Samsara Palace have also appeared in Annan State. The Heroes Club and the Jiang family of South America seem to have ideas about both sides. They have more small movements, and it is impossible to analyze their specific goals at present. Lin Yuxian rubbed his temples and said helplessly, "There are too many possibilities now, and the relationship between the enemy and us is completely chaotic. The Wang family of Beihai, the Purgatory of Heaven Capital, the Samsara Palace, Kunlun City, the Dark Knights, the Fantasy World, the Heroes Club, the Jiang family of South America, the Polar Ground Alliance, the Vatican, the Men in Black, the Shadow Throne. Dad, now all the forces in the Dark World, whether they are superpowers or official forces, are involved. There are too many possibilities. Any two forces may cooperate with each other, and naturally, they will betray each other. This situation is not good at all." Too many possibilities meant that the situation was completely out of balance, and no superpower had a reason to compromise. In your opinion, is there any beneficiary in such a chaotic situation? Lin Fengting asked. Lin Yuxian said without hesitation, "Everyone has suffered heavy losses. The Dark World has lost a lot of blood. In the past 3 years, including the final battle of Heaven Capital, the Dark World has lost at least hundreds of experts of the Thundershocking realm and more experts of the Fire-Flaming realm. In this situation, there may be huge benefits in the end, but at least now, everyone is a loser. I think if they had known that there would be today's situation, they would not have chosen to go to war. It doesn't matter now how the war started. Any force is now fighting for the sake of war. They don't want to fight, but they have no choice and can't get out." Lin Fengting nodded. He agreed with his son. "What's the key point?" Lin Fengting asked again. The key point. Lin Yuxian tried hard to think about the information he had read. After a while, he suddenly raised his eyebrows and said, "The Samsara Palace." Lin Fengting narrowed his eyes and did not speak for a while. The Samsara Palace was indeed the key point. This chaos began when the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City joined hands to suppress the Samsara Palace. The situation was also completely out of control at that time. The war continued until now, and there were battlefields everywhere. Snow Country, Europe, America, Annan State, they were all fighting. And it was incredible that the Samsara Palace could be seen on all the battlefields. And they were all quite active and active. When all the superpowers didn't want to fight but had to fight, every time the Samsara Palace took the initiative, the situation would be more chaotic. Then it developed into today's irremediable situation. The Samsara Palace was indeed the key. In recent years, every battle that could escalate conflicts and contradictions seemed to be provoked by the Samsara Palace. So today, the Samsara Palace was also the party that suffered the most. But what did the Samsara Palace want? According to the current situation, the Samsara Palace absolutely could not win. Qin Weibai did not borrow Lin Fengting's sword. Even if Lin Fengting sold himself to the Samsara Palace, the Samsara Palace would not get any benefits. Why did she do that? Lin Fengting whispered to himself. According to the analysis of the intelligence, the Samsara Palace wants to get its own foundation. Lin Yuxian shook his head. This speculation is reasonable, but now it seems unreliable. Just for its own foundation, why does it have to make a scene that can't end? Even if it can't end, it will end. Lin Fengting said faintly, if it is forced to end, what do you think will be the result? Lin Yuxian subconsciously glanced at his father. Lin Fengting's face was calm. Lin Yuxian pondered for a while and said faintly, if it is forced to end, at least one superpower will be completely destroyed, maybe. There was a hint of caution and temptation in his tone. Maybe there will be new superpowers coming into the secular world, just like the Purgatory of Heaven Capital appeared in Heaven Capital 3 years ago. Lin Fengting said non-committally, which is the most likely force to be destroyed? The Samsara Palace. This time, Lin Yuxian did not hesitate. The destruction of the Samsara Palace is not possible. Now it seems that it is basically a foregone conclusion. Lin Fengting fell silent. He knew that what his son said was true. But how could people believe the fact that the Samsara Palace suddenly destroyed itself? Father, Lin Yuxian hesitated. In a short time, his face turned red, and cold sweat oozed from his forehead. Are we going to enter the secular world? Until now, he still did not know that Qin Weibai had asked Lin Fengting to borrow the sword. Lin Fengting suddenly found so much recent information about the Dark World. Lin Yuxian subconsciously felt that the Lin clan was going to enter the secular world. Why should we enter the secular world? Lin Fengting shook his head and whispered, we are different from the Wang family of Beihai. The Lin clan is a clan, the Wang family of Beihai is also a clan, and the Jiang family of South America is also a clan. The biggest difference between the latter two and us is that they are used to gathering all branches together, so that they will be more powerful, but there will be more internal hidden dangers. So they will clean up internal discord and contradictions from time to time. If these contradictions can be completely eliminated, they will continue to be brilliant until the contradictions accumulate again to the extent that they have to be cleaned up. The cycle will start again. If they succeed, they will still be at the peak. But if they fail, the consequences will be equally unimaginable. But we are different. We spread out all the branches. Everyone can leave and get enough support. If they want something, they can get it themselves. The headquarters of the Lin clan can shelter them when necessary, but there is nothing worth coveting here. If we don't enter the secular world, the Lin clan will always be the Lin clan. Maybe some branches will disappear and the connection will be broken, but we will have more branches go out. We don't pursue power, but freedom can create everything. Lin Fengting looked at his son with a smile and whispered, I think it's good. Lin Yuxian breathed a sigh of relief and laughed. I think it's good too. Qin Weibai of the Samsara Palace found me. Lin Fengting said, she wanted to borrow a sword stroke from me. I agreed, so I came to look through these materials. You agreed? Lin Yuxian was shocked. I just lent her the sword stroke that I owed the Li family. Lin Fengting shook his head. Lin Yuxian's eyes flickered, and he said thoughtfully, when does she want to use this sword stroke? A month later, in Snow Country. Lin Fengting said. Snow Country? Lin Yuxian's pupils contracted, and he said with a smile, she intends to completely involve the Polar Ground Alliance. Dad, can I go to Snow Country with you? Lin Fengting glanced at him. I wanted to go to Zhongzhou State. Lin Yuxian said, I'm about to enter the peak of the thunder-shocking realm. Maybe I'll get some inspiration, there's still time. Lin Fengting thought for a while and said, go to Zhongzhou State first, and then go to Snow Country. There's no hurry. Lin Yuxian hesitated and nodded. I heard that Li Tianlan is back. I'm looking forward to the battle between him and Wang Shengxiao. I'm afraid that the greater the expectation, the greater the disappointment. Lin Fengting said with a smile. What do you mean? Lin Yuxian looked confused. Lin Fengting shook his head and didn't say much. He just said casually, go if you want to. Be careful. Something big is going to happen in the dark world recently. Lin Yuxian nodded, stood up, and walked to the door. When he was about to walk out of the study, he suddenly paused and whispered, Father, have you ever wondered why Qin Weibai asked you to borrow this sword stroke? He hesitated and continued, After all, Senior Li is still here. Lin Fengting's face was calm. He stood up, walked to the window, and opened it. It was late at night outside the window. Only the sound of insects could be heard in the quiet night. In Australia, after the curtain call of the opera, he found Qin Weibai, who had not left Sydney, and asked her this question. Since she wanted to borrow the sword, why didn't she go to Senior Li? The other party seemed to have more reasons to take action. But Qin Weibai's answer was extremely indifferent. That was the indifference of having no trust in the Li family. The Wang family of Beihai is overbearing, and the Li family of Zhongzhou State is paranoid. Only the Lin clan has affection. It's real. If there is a force in the world that I can completely trust, it can only be the Lin clan. This was Qin Weibai's original words. The Wang family of Beihai was indeed overbearing, but the Li family, how paranoid had it been over the years? Lin Fengting looked at the sparse starry sky outside the window, thinking. Lin Yuxian quietly retreated. A bright arc of light lit up the night sky as far as the eye could see. The arc of light flew and was brilliant in the night sky. With a momentary brilliance, it fell into the dim stars. The meteor fell. It began to drizzle in the sky. The rain was hazy. A clear yet blurry figure abruptly appeared below Lin Fengting's building. It was abrupt and natural. It seemed to be blown by the night wind, or falling by the rain. He appeared there without warning, but it was extremely harmonious. In the drizzle late at night, it was an ordinary but not ordinary middle-aged man. His appearance was ordinary. What was not ordinary was his dressing. He was dressed in plain clothes and shoes, and yet, in the middle of the night, the middle-aged man was wearing a pair of sunglasses. He was bald, and on his bald head were 9 neat and tidy ring scars. He could be said to be a monk, but he held a white horsetail whisk in his hand, a monk with a Taoist horsetail whisk in his hand, or a Taoist priest with ring scars. Cloth clothes, horsetail whisk, ring scars, and sunglasses. These nondescript clothes were combined with him, but there was a kind of indescribable nature. He stood in the night and raised his head. His gaze seemed to pass through the falling rain and fall on the highest place. A trace of shock finally flashed in Lin Fengting's eyes. His figure flickered, and in the next second, he was standing directly beside the middle-aged man. What's there? Lin Fengting asked. His voice was loud, and he emphasized his words, which seemed very clear. He did not ask what the other party was looking at, because he was blind. His voice was very heavy, because the other party was close to deaf and mute. He was Lin Su, Lin Fengting's younger brother. There was no such thing as a metaphysics grandmaster in the Lin clan, but Lin Su had been playing this role for many years. There was Wei Xian Xuanzi in Zhongzhou State. The people in the Lin clan did not know who was more profound, Lin Su or the other two. However, compared with the other two, Lin Su did not do a very good job of protecting himself. It was true that Lin Su was punished by the heavens for revealing the secrets of heaven. At the age of 20, Lin Su lost one eye, then the second eye, and all kinds of illnesses followed. His martial arts strength, which was not bad, began to plummet. So Lin Su began to shave. Then, when his hearing gradually became less sensitive, he picked up the horsetail whisk again. In recent years, Lin Su's hearing had been declining, and it had become a little difficult for him to even speak. In recent years, he had basically stopped speaking and even rarely appeared in front of the Lin clan. But every time he spoke, it basically meant that there would be one more powerful branch of the Lin clan. Lin Fengting had heard from his father that Lin Su's blessing in this life was extremely deep. In terms of luck, It was far more than Lin Fengting's by several times or even dozens of times. He was originally the most suitable person to be the patriarch of the Lin clan. If he had focused on martial arts, he was even expected to become a real chosen one, stronger than Wang Tianzong. But Lin Su came into contact with metaphysics. He destroyed himself and used his own blessing to condense the majestic luck for the entire Lin clan. The Lin clan stood in this world. If there was freedom and ease, there must be sacrifices. Lin Su was the sacrifice of the Lin clan. Lin Fengting was also the sacrifice of the Lin clan. Just like he named his son Lin Yuxian. The Lin clan was leisurely. How could Lin Yuxian really be leisurely in this life? Lin Su seemed to notice Lin Fengting. He raised his hand holding the horsetail whisk and pointed to the sky. His arm trembled violently. The snow-white horsetail whisk scattered in the night rain and was blown up by the wind, like a head of bitter white hair that had long lost any vitality. Don't say it if it's not important. Lin Fengting said. I have to say it. Lin Su's voice was hoarse and dry, and it seemed a little stiff and slow. The demon star fell. The demon star? Lin Fengting raised his eyebrows. Lin Su stood where he was and seemed to be thinking. Are you going to enter the secular world? He was silent for a long time before he asked, That woman? Her name is Qin Weibai. Lin Fengting said, Not for her. She borrowed the sword. I also borrowed the sword that I owed the Li family that year. She is the demon star. Lin Su said slowly. His voice did not become smoother as he spoke, but became more and more dry and stiff. He was a master of metaphysics, but he was not omniscient and omnipotent. At this moment, he knew Qin Weibai's name and Lin Fengting's sword. Only then could he know more things. This sword will be used in Snow Country. Lin Fengting said, You don't approve. But one strike is not enough. Lin Su said with difficulty, Fiend Star, she's asking for death. It's this man. Qin Weibai? Lin Fengting was shocked. He recalled the information he had read. He couldn't see any hope for the future of the Samsara Palace, nor could he see what the Samsara Palace wanted to do. Was Qin Weibai asking for death? Was that the answer? However, why does she want to die? Lin Fengting asked. The corner of Lin Su's mouth was already bleeding. The blood dripped onto the ground, mixing with the sound of the rain. The sound was faint and distant. I'm dealing with a calamity on behalf of others. He replied. Who? I don't know, it can't be calculated. What happens after she dies? A new era. So what if I don't die? It is also a new era. Then why did she seek death? I'm dealing with a calamity on behalf of others. All the questions suddenly returned to the original point. Lin Fengting was thoughtful. It turned out that this was a dead knot that couldn't be avoided. There was no choice and no way out. Will she die? Lin Fengting asked. Lin Su was silent for a while, then said hoarsely, She will definitely die. Lin Fengting frowned. He didn't think there was anything wrong with it, but he felt it was a pity. It would be such a pity if such a beautiful and peerless woman were to perish. Lin Fengting whispered, What will happen in the Battle of Snow Country? The Fiend Star will cause chaos. The disaster of troubled times. After the troubled times, there would be a new era. Lin Fengting took a deep breath and whispered, I will still use this sword. One sword is not enough. Lin Su's body was a little shaky, and he seemed to be unable to stand steadily. His voice became weaker and hoarser. If you want the Lin clan to continue to prosper, you should protect her from death. Why? Lin Fengting's face finally changed. Cause and effect. Lin Su's voice was strangely hoarse. When he heard the word cause and effect, he inexplicably shivered all over. The world seemed to become extremely gloomy and cold in an instant. A mouthful of blood sprayed directly from Lin Su's mouth. Lin Su's body fell down softly. Lin Fengting was shocked and suddenly held him. Lin Su fell into Lin Fengting's arms. His face was pale, but he kept saying, Zhongzhou State, go to Zhongzhou State. Chapter 317. Wang Tianzong was waiting for Qin Weibai. In the face of important matters, The most ambitious man in the Wang family of Beihai in the past 100 years had always been very easy to talk to. Qin Weibai postponed the meeting time. Then he would wait. There was still a lot of time. Wang Tianzong was not in a hurry. From early morning to dusk, a week was about to pass. Qin Weibai did not come. Wang Tianzong was still waiting. The relationship between the Samsara Palace and the Wang family of Beihai was not peaceful. Especially in recent years, there were constant frictions between the two sides. Many of the Wang family of Beihai's overseas intelligence agencies were destroyed by the Samsara Palace. But Wang Tianzong did not think that Qin Weibai would not have the courage to come to Mount Dibing. She was indeed a cold and sharp woman. In Wang Tianzong's eyes, Qin Weibai was like an absolutely smart or even wise lunatic. She would not flinch. Especially when Li Tianlan had appeared in Zhongzhou State, she would not flinch. Wang Tianzong still could not figure out the cause and effect between Qin Weibai and Li Tianlan. But in the final battle of Heaven Capital 3 years ago, he saw Li Tianlan's sword move. The sword light that lit up in the sky full of stars that night had not faded in the dark world. The frightening sword light tore the night, enough to replace too many unknowns and doubts. With that sword move, Qin Weibai would also come. Wang Tianzong had no doubt about that. Time passed in the rotation of the clock. Dusk passed. Dusk fell. The sky was dark. The waves on the back of the mountain kept hitting the mountain with too much history day and night. The night wind on Mount Dibing dissipated. Except for the sound of tides, the night in the whole mountain seemed to have frozen, like the eve of a rainstorm. A black Mercedes-Benz slowly drove on the mountain road leading to Mount Dibing. The blazing white light illuminated the road ahead. The guards belonging to the Wang family of Beihai at the foot of the mountain stopped the Mercedes-Benz immediately. After confirming the identity of the other party, they immediately reported and then waved their hands to let it go. The Mercedes-Benz ran straight up the mountain road and reached the top under the watchful eyes of countless people. No one stopped it. The Mercedes-Benz shuttled through the vast palaces on the top of Mount Dibing and finally stopped in front of a hall. This was the last palace on Mount Dibing, but it was very large, even larger than the palace where Wang Tianzong lived. The Mercedes stalled. Flaming Fire, who looked a little tired, quickly got out of the car, walked to the back seat, and opened the door respectfully. Qin Weibai, who had been invited, got out of the car and looked up at the extremely tall hall in her sight. The gloomy and oppressive night quietly became bright and lively. Qin Weibai stood in front of the hall. Although she did not move, she seemed to have gathered all the light around her, so that her whole body was shining. She was so reserved, so proud, so dignified and so cold. She was wearing a pale golden dress, and half of her fair and delicate arms were exposed to the air. The only decoration on her was a delicate lady's watch. Her long white hair was tied up, and a green hairpin was inserted in her soft hair. She stood there quietly, motionless, but her whole body carried a kind of noble and graceful bearing that almost made people dare not look at her directly. This was a true peerless beauty of the world. She seemed to want to release her beauty in the shortest amount of time, without any scruples, no longer concealing it. Thus, her beauty flourished even more than before. It was as if her perfection had been ignited, blazing and dazzling. The door to the hall opened automatically. Wang Tianzong's calm voice came from the inside, calm and peaceful. "Boss Qin, please come in." The light in the hall spilled out as the door was opened, illuminating the ancient plaque in front of the hall. The two dim words on the plaque looked more and more solemn. Those were the two simplest words. World. The most famous world palace on Mount Dibing. On the top of Mount Dibing, the height of this palace was second only to the stage of Formidable Person. It was the largest palace in the entire Wang family of Beihai, and also the highest level meeting place of the Wang family of Beihai. For hundreds of years, every time the Wang family of Beihai made a major move, there would be a result first, and then the implementation would begin. There was too much glory and splendor here. It was no exaggeration to say that everything you saw from the World Palace was the world of the Wang family of Beihai. Wang Tianzong asked Qin Weibai to meet here, which represented the solemnity and sincerity of the Wang family of Beihai. Qin Weibai's face was calm, and she stepped into the hall. It was like walking into the light from the darkness. The World Palace occupied a large area. There was a main hall and 2 side halls inside. It was only used for meetings, not for living, so there was only 1 floor. In this way, under the ceiling that was nearly 30 meters high, the whole layout of the World Palace looked extremely magnificent. Qin Weibai looked extremely small in it. This was the first time that Qin Weibai walked into the World Palace. The decoration in the hall was not luxurious. It could even be said that there was no decoration. But every brick, tile, and column showed the vicissitudes of life, which was heavy and solemn enough to make people tremble. Standing here, it was easy to think of the suffocating power represented by the Wang family of Beihai. Qin Weibai remained calm and collected. She walked on the extremely long carpet spread out in the hall and looked up ahead. There were many steps in the deepest part of the hall. Each step was nearly half a meter high, and there were 9 steps in total. At the end of the steps was a high platform, on which there was a huge chair made of suet white jade. This was the throne of the Wang family of Beihai. Wang Tianzong sat on it, which was really superior. Even if Qin Weibai looked up, she could only see Wang Tianzong's feet. She could not even see his face and expression. Qin Weibai's eyes were shining, bright and deep, like the distant night sky. She glanced at Wang Tianzong and said, "Come down." Her voice was very soft, but it was particularly clear in the hall. Wang Tianzong stood up from the throne and walked down the steps step by step. The steps were very high. So every step must be down to earth. Wang Tianzong came to Qin Weibai. He smiled and said, "Welcome." His eyes were calm, but there were some fluctuations deep in his eyes. Qin Weibai was really amazing tonight. His unchanging appearance carried a temperament that seemed to have been sublimated. Wang Tianzong had seen so many so-called beauties, but none of them could compare with her. "Sit down." Wang Tianzong pointed to the soft leather sofas arranged vertically on both sides of the carpet. Qin Weibai sat down. It was cool and light. Between the sofas, there was a tea table made of fine sandalwood. The tea table was empty, without tea, water, or flowers. Wang Tianzong also sat down. There was a faint smile on his face, but his eyes were a little cold. "I'm surprised," he said. "I've been waiting for you to see me. But now you appear in front of me, I still haven't received the news that you have entered Beihai province." He asked slowly, "Is the intelligence system of the Wang family of Beihai so bad?" "Not bad." Qin Weibai's tone was brief. "Then how did you do it?" The smile on Wang Tianzong's face remained unchanged. "It's not difficult." Qin Weibai shook her head. "Did you know that I would wait for you in the World Palace?" Wang Tianzong asked again. "It's not difficult." Qin Weibai's answer did not change. "Amazing." Wang Tianzong really laughed this time. A strong smile appeared on his face, which made his eyes become warmer. "This is what I mean. The intelligence agency of the Samsara Palace is really amazing. In the past 3 years, you have destroyed nearly half of the intelligence network of the Wang family of Beihai overseas, but I can't find the operation mode of the intelligence agency of the Samsara Palace. Your intelligence agency seems to not exist. Occasionally there are some flaws, but later it is proved that these are all traps. Such a meticulous intelligence agency is incredible. Your Majesty, you flatter me." Qin Weibai said calmly, "The intelligence agency is not everything. The intelligence agency of the Samsara Palace does have some clever places, but at most, it can only take the lead in some things." Wang Tianzong raised his eyebrows. He took a deep look at Qin Weibai and said with a smile, "Indeed, the intelligence agency is not everything." His fingers tapped on the tea table beside his hand calmly, and he suddenly asked, "How long can the Samsara Palace hold on?" Qin Weibai looked at Wang Tianzong with cold eyes. Wang Tianzong looked at Qin Weibai gently. "Your Majesty, thank you for your concern. The Samsara Palace can hold on." Qin Weibai said, "Now it seems that it is true." Wang Tianzong nodded. "But it is temporary. Your intelligence agency is very strong, but it can only delay the time of your destruction. At least in my eyes, I can't see the hope of the Samsara Palace to continue to develop. The intelligence agency of the Wang family of Beihai may be bloated, but it is not incompetent. As an authority, I can roughly see what you have done in the past 3 years. Oh, the Samsara Palace is really bold. You provoked a war in the Dark World, which is equivalent to a war with the whole Dark World. He shook his head and said blandly, "You brought about your own destruction." "This is the way of the Samsara Palace," Qin Weibai said softly. Her voice was not anxious or regretful, but calm. "Even if it is destroyed in the end, it is the fate of the Samsara Palace. You need help." Wang Tianzong said with a smile, "You need a real ally, not a mutual defensive state with the purgatory of heaven capital, but a completely trustworthy ally." "For example?" Qin Weibai said calmly. "For example, the Wang family of Beihai." Wang Tianzong tapped on the table with his fingers. "I have a suggestion. The Wang family of Beihai and the Samsara Palace cooperate fully. What do you think?" Qin Weibai turned her head and glanced at Wang Tianzong. There was no emotion in her eyes. "Nothing much," she said without hesitation. "You will all die." Wang Tianzong narrowed his eyes and said with a chuckle, "If you cooperate with the Wang family of Beihai, at least there is a chance of survival. As long as you are willing, I can come forward and let the Samsara Palace enter Zhongzhou State. I can settle the final battle of Heaven Capital. I will personally help you solve the current trouble. At that time, the Samsara Palace will be based on Zhongzhou State, and its future will be limitless." This was definitely an extremely tempting condition. Wang Tianzong did not think that Qin Weibai had any reason to refuse. Qin Weibai did not refuse, but she did not agree either. She raised the corner of her rosy and delicate mouth with a sneer and continued, "And then? The Samsara Palace enters Zhongzhou State, and we are allies. Then, is the Samsara obliged to help you wipe out the purgatory of Heaven Capital? Help you wipe out the Samsara Palace? Or even Sai City? Oh, maybe you will promise the Samsara Palace the position of the war god of Zhongzhou State. Helping you is helping ourselves. Your Majesty, am I right?" Wipe out the purgatory of Heaven Capital, eradicate Kunlun City, Sai City. There was no need to say what would happen after that. The silence of the Wang family of Beihai many years ago led to the decline of the Li family. It also clearly expressed their will not to share Zhongzhou State with any force. The Wang family of Beihai doesn't need you to do this. Wang Tianzong said blandly, "Of course, if you are willing to do it, we will not object." "Then what do you want the Samsara Palace to do?" Qin Weibai's tone seemed to be a little surprised. "Marriage." Wang Tianzong said, "Let Li Tianlan marry Yuetong and join the Wang family of Beihai. I can turn a blind eye to your existence and the existence of the girl from the Dongqing clan. You can influence Li Tianlan. As long as he joins the Wang family of Beihai, the Samsara Palace will be an eternal ally of the Wang family of Beihai." Qin Weibai looked at Wang Tianzong quietly. After a long while, she suddenly laughed. Along with her smile, the ancient and solemn hall was like 100 flowers blooming, dazzling and dazzling. "You are afraid." Qin Weibai looked at Wang Tianzong and said with certainty. Wang Tianzong's pupils contracted and he said in a deep voice, "This is the best result for all of us. I won't treat him badly." Wang Tianzong said, "Yuetong marrying him is the clearest signal. Boss Qin, do you know the Lin clan?" Qin Weibai's tone was indifferent. She had already guessed what Wang Tianzong wanted to say, and the light in her eyes was colder. The ancestors of the Lin clan had a deep relationship with the ancestors of the Wang family of Beihai. It is no exaggeration to say that the Lin clan came from the Wang family of Beihai. Wang Tianzong's eyes were burning. "As long as Li Tianlan is willing to join the Wang family of Beihai, I can give him the same status as the ancestors of the Lin clan in the Wang family of Beihai. Here, Li Tianlan can have the same power as Xiaoyao. In the future, his status will be equal to that of the patriarch and equal to that of Xianxia. I can even support him to deal with Kunlun City. I can give him everything he wants." He stood up, waved his hand and said lightly, "I know what you want to say. If Li Tianlan joins the Wang family of Beihai, the Samsara Palace and Sai City will definitely change their positions. The Wang family of Beihai will not covet the Samsara Palace and Sai City. When the time is right, Li Tianlan can leave like the ancestors of the Lin clan and establish a family at will. At that time, the family he establishes will also become the eternal ally of the Wang family of Beihai. Qin Weibai listened without saying a word. Until Wang Tianzong finished, she smiled and said, "Do you believe what you said? Do you doubt me?" Wang Tianzong's tone was cold. "It's impossible for the Li family of Beihai to—" "That's the Li family. I'm talking about Li Tianlan." Wang Tianzong interrupted Qin Weibai with a sneer. "Will Li Tianlan really have a good end in the Li family? Boss Qin, we can sympathize with the Li family's collapse, but do you really think that the Li family is good? You know what's going on. Li Tianlan is in the Li family. Even if I don't touch him, even if Kunlun City doesn't touch him, he will not have a good end in the end. The Li family is stubborn. Li Tianlan is a genius, but he carries the burden of the Li family. How ridiculous is that? Joining the Wang family of Beihai is his best choice." Qin Weibai looked at Wang Tianzong. Her eyes narrowed slightly. The subtle movement was not sharp, but it made her look a little lazy. "What do you know?" she asked. "It's just speculation." Wang Tianzong was expressionless and said something insincere. There were some things that Qin Weibai didn't want Wang Tianzong to know. Similarly, there were some things that Wang Tianzong didn't want Qin Weibai to know that he already knew. For example, who died mysteriously in Heaven Capital? "You hate the Li family." Wang Tianzong said, "So it's the best way for Li Tianlan to join the Wang family of Beihai." "It does sound good." Qin Weibai nodded and changed the topic. "But your Majesty seems to forget something. The Wang family of Beihai is not the Wang family of Beihai hundreds of years ago, and you are not the chosen one ancestor of the Wang family of Beihai. Tianlan is different from the ancestor of the Lin clan. If Tianlan joins the Wang family of Beihai, he may be very popular in the short term. But when he has no value, his end may not be better than his end in the Li family. Your Majesty, you are ambitious. You don't care about anyone, and you can sacrifice everything, including your children, your wife, and even yourself. As long as you think it's good for the Wang family of Beihai, you can sacrifice anything. Hundreds of years ago, your ancestors could sacrifice everything just to protect their families. That's why the Wang family of Beihai exists today. Now you sacrifice everything, including your family, just to protect the Wang family of Beihai. I understand your approach, but I will never work with you." Wang Tianzong paced back and forth in front of Qin Weibai and didn't speak for a long time. "Why do you say that about me?" After a long time, Wang Tianzong asked. Qin Weibai shook her head. "I don't need evidence. I think so I can refuse you. That's all." "You refused me?" Wang Tianzong asked thoughtfully. "Do you know what will happen to those who refuse me in Mount Dibing? Your Majesty, do you know that when I can bypass your intelligence system in Beihai province and come here, will I bring 2 more people with me?" Qin Weibai said with a faint smile. "For example, the palace master, an deity." Wang Tianzong stared at Qin Weibai and didn't speak. He seemed to be judging whether it was true or not. Time ticked by. Qin Weibai smiled and said calmly, "It seems that I'm safe now, right? What about Li Tianlan?" Wang Tianzong said expressionlessly, "I can't persuade Li Tianlan, and I can't persuade you. You refused my suggestion, so Li Tianlan is my enemy. You can't kill him." Qin Weibai stood up and stared into Wang Tianzong's eyes. She said coldly, "Li Honghe can't protect him all the time. He will die." Wang Tianzong said meaningfully, "That's because he deserves to die." Qin Weibai's tone unconsciously became a little sharp, and a trace of resentment flashed in her clear eyes. Wang Tianzong was slightly stunned. He looked at Qin Weibai and said in a deeper tone, "Do you hate him? Or, do you hate the Li family?" Qin Weibai took a deep breath. Her snow-white hands clenched and loosened subconsciously. "Do you want to know the reason?" she asked. "Do you believe in destiny?" "Yes and no." Wang Tianzong said, "Destiny is fate, or luck. It's not unchangeable. The Li family also has its own metaphysics. Although Li Honghe is not a metaphysics grandmaster, he at least knows a little. Qin Weibai said calmly, Tianlan was born with great luck, but his personal luck was almost drained by Li Honghe and transferred to the Li family as a whole. Wang Tianzong frowned slightly. He didn't understand metaphysics, but after spending a long time with Xianxia, he at least knew something. Li Tianlan's luck seemed to be extremely strong 3 years ago. What do you know? Qin Weibai said coldly, that's the luck condensed by Li Honghe with thousands of dead people of the Li family. It looks extremely strong, but in fact, it's all death qi. If there is no accident, Tianlan's life will be extremely smooth and unstoppable. But it's difficult for him to live to middle age with the luck condensed by death qi. At that time, he will definitely die. But at that time, Tianlan will have brought the Li family to the peak again. Obviously, Li Honghe won't care about his life or death. At least at the beginning, that's what he planned to do. Wang Tianzong's mouth twitched, and he couldn't say anything for a while. That was indeed what Li Honghe could do. But Wang Tianzong didn't think there was anything wrong with it. If the two exchanged places and the Wang family of Beihai needed to rise again, he would also choose to sacrifice his most outstanding junior in exchange for the glory of the entire Wang family of Beihai. That was indeed the last resort. But Qin Weibai was Li Tianlan's woman. How could she accept the so-called helplessness? She hated Li Honghe and the Li family. That was the most normal emotion. And it was a strong hatred that couldn't be dissolved. Wang Tianzong thought silently. Suddenly, he thought of something and said subconsciously, no. He stared at Qin Weibai, narrowed his eyes and whispered, Li Tianlan now has the dragon vein. If all his luck was supported by the aura of death, then how could he bear the dragon vein that was full of life force? Qin Weibai was indifferent. Her eyes were reluctant and desolate. Death qi was a tribulation. 3 years ago, as Great Master Wu's adopted daughter, she was ready for everything when she asked to see Great Master Wu in Lin. Great Master Wu let Li Tianlan's life destiny return to chaos. The so-called death qi and the so-called tribulation were all born by Qin Weibai. That was why she brought the Samsara Palace to destruction. Li Tianlan had made a great breakthrough and had the dragon vein. She was going to face the tribulation for Li Tianlan. Qin Weibai took a deep breath and turned to leave the hall. She had no intention of negotiating. Because no matter what Wang Tianzong said, she couldn't agree. You also hate the Wang family of Beihai, Wang Tianzong said calmly behind her. Why? Qin Weibai stopped in her tracks. She turned to look at Wang Tianzong with a strange look in her eyes. Dongqing Huangtu was in Kunlun, she smiled and said. He was stabbed to death by a woman, but there was another woman who participated in the siege. Wang Tianzong's eyes twitched. He looked at Qin Weibai seriously and didn't speak. Samsara really can't hold on for long. Qin Weibai said, but before Samsara disappears, we still have enough ability to give all of you a real surprise. You're courting death. Wang Tianzong said slowly, why bother? What do you want? A new era. Qin Weibai turned and moved forward. Her voice echoed in the World Palace, and it was as loud as a phoenix. A new era that doesn't need any great family. In any era, the Wang family of Beihai will be the greatest family. Wang Tianzong narrowed his eyes. So, Qin Weibai's clear and soft voice kept echoing in the World Palace. Chapter 318. This secret meeting could be said to have parted on bad terms. Wang Tianzong didn't get what he wanted. Instead, he confirmed the hostile relationship between the Samsara Palace and the Wang family of Beihai. Qin Weibai had already left. However, her voice still seemed to reverberate in the ancient and solemn space of the World Palace. All of you should go to hell forever. She said this very calmly, very lightly. He wasn't gnashing his teeth, nor was he hysterical. It was as if he was talking about the most ordinary thing. It was calm and peaceful. Extreme calmness was a kind of madness in itself. Wang Tianzong could feel the determination behind the calmness. That was hatred. A hatred that would not rest until one of them was dead. The calmer it was, the more intense it was. Wang Tianzong was a little annoyed and even had some killing intent. But he still did not stop her from leaving. He stood in front of the World Palace, watching the graceful Qin Weibai get in the car and flaming fire start the car. The black Mercedes-Benz retreated in the silent night. It went down the mountain and gradually became a little red, becoming more and more blurry. Wang Tianzong was motionless. He was thinking over every detail of tonight's meeting. Although both sides talked a lot during this meeting, it didn't last long. But Wang Tianzong thought for a long time, even longer than the time of this conversation. It was windy on Mount Dibbing late at night. The wind with the fishy and salty smell of the deep sea blew over. The stifling feeling faded a little, and the flowers and trees in front of the World Palace swayed with the wind lazily. Wang Tianzong recalled the conversation just now and gradually calmed down. He would not let anything interfere with his judgment, nor would he make any decisions when he was upset. Most of the conversation began to fade from his mind. Wang Tianzong's eyes became deep again. There was a plum tree in front of the World Palace. The plum tree was not very tall, but its loose branches were extremely verdant. The species of the plum tree was black amber cultivated by the Star Nation. It usually matured in late July and had an extremely fragrant and sweet taste. This was the only tree in front of the World Palace. Planted among the flowers and grass, it stood out from the crowd. Wang Tianzong walked out of the hall and looked at Li Shu in front of him with no expression. He was silent. The wind grew stronger. The wind died down again. The lights on Mount Dibbing gradually turned off. Thunder rumbled in the starry sky. The World Palace was silent. Standing in front of the plum tree, Wang Tianzong was as silent as a statue. "It's going to rain." A gentle voice rang out behind her. Summer solstice appeared beside Wang Tianzong. She looked at her husband, and her lively eyes were filled with worry. "Let's go back first?" Wang Tianzong shook his head and was still thinking. "It didn't go well?" Summer solstice asked. Wang Tianzong agreed and said with a smile, "It's worse than before. I shouldn't have invited her. It doesn't make sense." He never minded telling his wife about the general trend of the dark world and his own plans. Summer solstice was lively and simple, even a little silly. She didn't care about anything in the dark world at all. Wang Tianzong didn't expect his wife to analyze anything for him. He did. She listened. She had forgotten. That alone was enough. Samsara Palace, Summer Solstice frowned. She was simple, but she was not really heartless. During this time, Wang Tianzong became more and more silent. She saw it and vaguely knew the reason. This was also what she didn't understand. "Why does the Samsara Palace give you so much pressure?" Summer Solstice asked. "Because of the master of Samsara Palace." Wang Tianzong's eyes were deep and gloomy. Summer Solstice knew the master of Samsara Palace. Not because the master of Samsara Palace defeated Gu Xingyun, but because that woman once took the 12 supermasters of Samsara directly to Mount Dibbing and escaped unscathed. "Is she very strong?" Summer Solstice's eyes were a little confused. Wang Tianzong was silent for a while, as if he was also thinking about the question he should have known the answer to. How was the combat capability of the master of Samsara Palace? Not strong. Wang Tianzong thought for a while and shook his head. But also very strong. Summer Solstice looked at Wang Tianzong quietly. From the point of view of the first on the divine list, the master of Samsara Palace was indeed not strong, although she now ranked very high on the divine list. In terms of pure combat capability, the master of Samsara Palace should not be a match for Gu Xingyun. Wang Tianzong said, "Gu Xingyun failed 3 years ago because of his carelessness." He didn't expect that the master of Samsara Palace would use the 10th unique domain of Kunlun City. If the two meet now, Gu Xingyun will win. Although he will pay a great price, he is indeed a little stronger than the master of Samsara Palace. Then, Summer Solstice opened her mouth. Gu Xingyun was slightly stronger than the master of Samsara Palace. So even if he defeated the master of Samsara Palace, he would also pay a great price. Wang Tianzong was stronger than Gu Xingyun. Summer Solstice didn't think that her husband needed to pay any price to defeat Gu Xingyun. The gap between the first and the fifth on the divine list seemed not big, but the subtle distance was also huge. Kunlun City and the Wang family of Beihai coexisted in Zhongzhou State, not because their martial arts strength could compete with the Wang family of Beihai, but because of the general trend, politics, power schemes, balance, and many other things. Among the superpowers, the strength of the leader was very important, but it was not so important that it could decide life and death. Otherwise, the Wang family of Beihai would have unified the world long ago. But the Samsara Palace was different. The Samsara Palace developed extremely fast, but they had no foundation so far. The master of Samsara Palace was everything. Once she died, the Samsara Palace would be completely destroyed. If the master of Samsara Palace was slightly inferior to Gu Xingyun, why did Wang Tianzong pay so much attention to her? It's true if it's just about winning or losing, Wang Tianzong said. Wang Tianzong said. He remembered the hidden sword that the master of Samsara Palace used when she climbed Mount Dibbing. Her strength lies not in her comprehensive combat capability, but in that sword stroke. Wang Tianzong narrowed his eyes, which were a little cold. Any expert had the means to fight back in a desperate situation. But the sword stroke of the master of Samsara Palace gave Wang Tianzong a completely different feeling. The opponent's comprehensive combat capability was not so top-notch, but the feeling that the sword stroke brought him at that time made him feel a near-fatal threat. It was a fierce sword stroke that ignored life and death. The master of Samsara Palace would definitely die when the sword stroke came out, but Wang Tianzong didn't think that he could take it unscathed. He would be seriously injured. And it would be an absolute serious injury. This sword stroke was the key to the master of Samsara Palace's ranking at the top of the divine list. She was not strong, but she was also very strong. Just because of this? Summer Solstice's eyes were a little confused. That's one reason. Wang Tianzong whispered, the main reason is that she is a lunatic. A woman with an extreme and crazy personality controlled that sword stroke. Everyone would be afraid and pay attention to it. Qin Weibai said that the Samsara Palace would give everyone a surprise even when it couldn't hold on. Wang Tianzong didn't doubt that. That sword stroke alone was enough to be a surprise for anyone. Wang Tianzong took a deep breath, took out a cigarette, and lit it. The phone suddenly rang. It sounded a little harsh in the silent night. Wang Tianzong took out his phone and looked at it. It was a call from Firmament. Firmament, an expert of the half-step invincible realm from the Wang family of Beihai. Even in the chaos of the dark world, he rarely took action. Only a few core figures of the Wang family of Beihai knew that Firmament had secretly entered Snow Country with some elites more than a year ago. Wang Tianzong answered the phone. Your Majesty. Firmament didn't talk nonsense and went straight to the point. His voice was a little tired and complicated. He whispered, I just got the news that the Vladimir family has been exterminated. Even with Wang Tianzong's wisdom, he couldn't help but tremble when he heard the news. Vladimir. In the language of the Snow Country, it meant to possess the world. The Vladimir family did not own the world, but to some extent, it could be said that they owned the Snow Country. As one of the 6 oligarchs of Snow Empire, every important figure of the Vladimir family held an important position in Snow Empire. Perhaps they could call the wind and summon the rain in different domains. However, the news from the Heavenly Dome realm was that their race had been exterminated. It wasn't just the clan leader who was killed. Instead, the entire clan was annihilated. For such a deep-rooted oligarch family to disappear in the Snow Empire, even before daybreak, the entire Snow Empire would completely fall into chaos. Who did it? Wang Tianzong said seriously. At present, all the clues point to the Polar Ground Alliance. It looks like an internal strife of the Polar Ground Alliance, but this is too exaggerated. Firmament said with a bitter smile. Wang Tianzong remained silent. The internal strife of the Polar Ground Alliance had reached the point where the Vladimir family had been wiped out, which was indeed exaggerated. Even in the Polar Ground Alliance, the Vladimir family was one of the core components and played an important role in the alliance. If it was just internal strife, it would at most be a matter of changing the patriarch, and the whole family would be destroyed. This was enough to shake the foundation of the Polar Ground Alliance. None of the parties involved in the internal strife would do this. The current dominator of the Polar Ground Alliance was code-named Tyrant. He ranked 7th on the new divine list. He was Tyrant, but he was not a fool. The Samsara Palace took action. Wang Tianzong said in a low tone. He did not have the most direct evidence to prove that the Samsara Palace took action. However, some of the movements of the Samsara Palace in Snow Empire in the past 3 years were enough to support Wang Tianzong's speculation. 3 years ago, he had invited Tyrant to the Wang family of Beihai as a guest. Tyrant came as promised. Wang Tianzong had reminded him to pay attention to the Samsara Palace, but Tyrant was soon distracted by the civil strife that broke out in the Polar Ground Alliance. In the past 3 years, the Polar Ground Alliance had been in turmoil, but it was still under control. The extermination of the Vladimir family was definitely the first fangs that the Samsara Palace showed. In the Dark World, this would also be the clearest signal, because it meant that the civil strife of the Polar Ground Alliance had been completely out of control. It meant that the Polar Ground Alliance was in danger. If the Polar Ground Alliance completely collapsed, who would be the new king in the entire Snow Empire and even the Dark World of Eastern Europe? At the very least, now that the situation was unclear, any superpower would have a chance. Wang Tianzong was short of breath. He didn't even have to think about the next scene. No one was willing to give up such a big benefit. The Dark World was in chaos. Now the Polar Ground Alliance was in danger. It would not stop the chaos in the Dark World. Instead, it would give everyone a reason to fight to the death. And the entire Snow Empire would become the battlefield for all the forces in the Dark World. Wang Tianzong could not stop all this. It was impossible for him not to participate in this matter. Snow Empire was too close to Beihai Province. The major forces were fighting in Snow Empire, which was definitely a threat to the Wang family of Beihai that could not be ignored. More importantly, in the eyes of the major forces, the Wang family of Beihai, which was very close to Snow Empire, was also a threat that could not be ignored. Wang Tianzong suddenly found that the situation of the Wang family of Beihai was so urgent. He still had a lot of things to do. Li Honghe did not die. Li Tianlan did not die. The cooperation with Kunlun City had not officially begun. Now Snow Empire, the largest country in the world, had become a battlefield again. If this was the goal of the Samsara Palace, then all this would not be a coincidence. Wang Tianzong took a deep drag on the cigarette. In the chaos, his eyes were calmer than usual. They were cold and rational without any emotion. I got it. He held his mobile phone. Wait and see. Don't stand out. I'll send someone there. When I solve the matter of Zhongzhou State, I'll go there myself. Firmament's voice was excited. In the time of one sentence, Wang Tianzong's eyes had become calm and determined. Wang Tianzong hung up the phone and looked at the plum tree in front of him. At the beginning of July, the tree was already full of fruits. Although they were not completely ripe, the color had turned into a rich purple. Wang Tianzong reached out and picked a fruit. He wiped it casually and put it in his mouth. The unripe fruit was a little sour. However, Wang Tianzong ate very seriously and swallowed all the bitterness into his stomach little by little. It's sour. After saying that, he threw away the core of the fruit. His movement was very light. But the trajectory of the core was straight as a line and instantly penetrated the whole fruit tree. There was no sword intent in front of the World Palace. However, the lush fruit trees suddenly exploded in an instant. Branches, tree trunks, tree roots, everything was sent flying into the sky. A slight wind blew over. The messy flying fruit tree disappeared quietly. A deep pit on the ground became the only trace of the existence of the fruit tree. Summer Solstice stared blankly at the plum tree turning into ashes in the air. She still remembered the scene when this fruit tree was planted in front of the World Palace. At that time, she was still a child. Wang Tianzong was also a child. Li Guangtu was also a child. At that time, Li Honghe was still the god of war of Zhongzhou State and Uncle Li for these children. It was a spring. Uncle Li, Uncle Wang, and several top figures of the Wang family of Beihai were in the World Palace. Wang Tianzong, who was still a child, and Summer Solstice were playing in front of the World Palace. Wang Tianzong took a bite of a fruit in his hand. He said, "It's sour." So he threw the fruit out and threw it to the front door of the World Palace. Uncle Li came out from the door and caught the fruit thrown by Wang Tianzong. So there was a plum tree in front of the World Palace. The plum tree planted by Uncle Li. Over the years, except for the name engraved on the stone of Formidable Person on the stage of Formidable Person, this plum tree was the last trace left by Li Honghe in Mount Dibing. Now this trace, or friendship, had been completely crushed by the sword intent and turned into nothingness. The plum tree was gone. It seemed that there was no need for Uncle Li to exist. Summer Solstice's eyes were a little sad. Wang Tianzong turned around with a calm face and reached out to rub her hair. "Go to sleep first. I'll go to the lab and then go down the mountain." "Go down the mountain?" Summer Solstice's delicate body trembled. "Go to Kunlun first and then Ling." Wang Tianzong's tone was calm. There was not much time. He had made up his mind and did not want to delay. Summer Solstice was silent. She wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Samsara Palace, Lin, and Li Tianlan, Snow Country. Great changes had taken place in the dark world. Even Wang Tianzong did not seem to be sure this time. Otherwise, he did not need to go to the lab to refine the immortality potion. At the critical moment, it was equivalent to Wang Tianzong's life. "Be careful. I'll wait for you at home," Summer Solstice whispered. Her eyes were a little worried. "Don't worry." Wang Tianzong smiled and said, "When I come back, nothing will happen." He walked past Summer Solstice. He passed by the pit where the plum tree used to be. Wang Tianzong stepped over it. The sword energy all over the sky suddenly fell from above. It pierced into the ground. The hard ground began to tremble, and the pit spread rapidly. The ground was collapsing, turning into a round pit with a radius of tens of meters. Water light emerged from the bottom of the pit. It looked like a small pond. All traces of the plum tree completely disappeared. "Plant some lotus flowers." Wang Tianzong said, "I can eat the lotus seed soup you made next year." Wang Tianzong stayed in the lab until late at night. When he left the lab, there was a crystal pendant around his neck. The pendant was crystal clear and had a strange shape. It looked like a small whistle. A few drops of dark purple liquid flowed slowly in the whistle, dazzling. He returned to the World Palace. Summer Solstice had left. The water light in the small pond that he stepped out became more and more obvious. Wang Tianzong glanced at it casually and walked into the World Palace again. The gate slowly closed behind him. It was dark in the hall. Wang Tianzong did not turn on the light. He just walked step by step into the depths of the hall in the dark. He climbed the steps and returned to the white jade throne, which symbolized the supreme power of the Wang family of Beihai. Wang Tianzong's expression was cautious. He touched an imperceptible mechanism behind the back of the chair. The white jade throne began to move forward. There was no sound. A hidden passage was exposed under the throne. Wang Tianzong walked in with a calm face. The throne closed up once more, and the moment it did so, a soft cracking sound could be heard. So the light in the hidden passage was on. The light was dim. Wang Tianzong walked in the dark passage for a long time. A bronze door appeared in front of him. The bronze door glowed with a gloomy luster under the light. 2 doors, 2 badges. The door panel on the left was carved with the family emblem of the Wang family of Beihai's firmament and the sea. On the door panel on the right, there were some messy carvings of lines. The seemingly irregular lines were indescribably cold and weird. The chaotic lines gathered in the middle and formed a vague outline. There were 2 irregular diamonds above the outline, like a pair of eyes. Devil's eye. 2 eyes. The left eye represented passage, and the right eye represented destruction. Wang Tianzong reached out and touched the left eye. The center of the door panel was sunken, and a screen appeared. Wang Tianzong entered the password. Light shot out of the screen and swept through Wang Tianzong's body. Then, with a click, the bronze door opened to both sides. A piercing cold came to his face. The world behind the door was still a narrow and dark passage, but it was extremely cold and dry. Wang Tianzong walked along the passage for a long time before he came to another door. The same procedure. The second door opened. The world behind the door was an ultra-low temperature hall. The temperature was even close to minus 50 degrees Celsius. Wang Tianzong's breath was filled with white cold air. He silently scanned the hall in front of him. The hall was huge. Ice coffins were the only things in the hall. The ice coffins were lined up in rows, and there were hundreds of ice coffins. However, most of the ice coffins were empty. Only a small number of ice coffins contained figures that seemed to be in a deep sleep. In terms of location, this hall should be dozens of meters below the stage of formidable person of the Wang family of Beihai. The figures in a small number of ice coffins were the most hidden power of the Wang family of Beihai. The devil troop. Wang Tianzong stood in front of the door. There was a row of buttons in front of the door, like switches. Wang Tianzong reached out and gently touched the button in front of him. In the extremely low temperature, his mind became calmer and calmer. To refine the immortality potion. To wake up the devil troop that almost never appeared. It was all to cope with the coming chaos. If he had convinced Qin Weibai, all this might not have been needed. But Qin Weibai refused him. She hated the Wang family of Beihai. Wang Tianzong frowned. Because of Dongqing Huang. Because of that year. He looked at the button in front of him and said to himself with no expression, "Who is Dongqing Huang to?" His finger pressed down. The button vibrated gently. There was a buzzing ultrasonic sound that normal people could not hear in the hall. The sound wave swept through the hall. The specific wave band surrounded the ice coffins closest to Wang Tianzong in a state invisible to the naked eye. It was silent. In the ice coffins, the figures that seemed to be sleeping opened their eyes one after another. They raised their stiff palms and opened the ice coffins in their hands. The figures in the ice coffins sat up with ice chips all over their bodies. Everyone looked at Wang Tianzong in silence. The scene was weird and horrifying. Wang Tianzong passed by the ice coffins in front of him. The activation password corresponding to each person sounded in the hall, steady and clear. Silence. Shut up. Frenzy. Autumn water. Amber. Wrathsea. Conflict. Doomsday. Slaughter. Divine sword. Divine punishment. Wang Tianzong's clear voice kept echoing in the hall. The devil troop was one of the most mysterious foundations of the Beihai force. Every soldier had to go back to sleep here after being transformed. Their strength was unparalleled. But the overly powerful force put their bodies on the verge of collapse. So most of the time, they slept at the lowest temperature. They were different from the Terracotta Army of Zhongzhou State and the Kusanagi Force of East Island. Their combat effectiveness was extremely powerful, but they could not be exposed to the outside world for a long time because they could not control their power. So the Terracotta Army and the Kusanagi Force became super transformed soldiers that could be awakened at any time with a password and could be reused at any time. The Devil Troop became the foundation of the Wang family of Beihai and the cruelest and most luxurious consumable. Wang Tianzong looked at the figure sitting up in the ice coffin and said the last password with a calm look. Extinction. 12 passwords. The bodies of the 12 soldiers shook at the same time. It was still silent, but everyone's eyes were focused on Wang Tianzong. The password is correct. A somewhat mechanical voice sounded. It seemed that they had slept for so long that they were still a little slow for a while. What's the matter? Please go to Snow Country. Wang Tianzong's tone was calm. A sudden clap of thunder resounded over the North Sea province. The thunder covered the entire Mount Dibing, and the huge sound wave poured into the ground. The storm that had been brewing for a long time poured down and fluttered wildly. Huge waves rose under the stage of formidable person and hit Mount Dibing. In the Devil Hall, dozens of meters underground, there was only the sound of the violent tide, except for the dull thunder. The tide was endless. The stiff and slow voice sounded again. We set off now. They were the most luxurious consumables of the Wang family of Beihai. From the moment they were awakened, they already had an unchangeable fate. The 12 people walked out of the ice coffin in turn and walked to the exit of the hall. Wang Tianzong stood behind them and bowed deeply. In the huge tide, his voice spread in the hall, calm and respectful. Chapter 319. Second update. It was drizzling in Huading. The dense rain was like a transparent silk thread filling the sky and the earth, falling down in disorder and order, soaking the whole city and the Huangpu River in the city. The river was smooth. The rain fell on the river, bringing tiny ripples all over the river. The light rain was leisurely and gentle. In the almost carefree rain curtain, the whole city was with a misty and hazy leisure. A boat was floating on the river. It was the smallest sightseeing boat on the Huangpu River. The boat was going from west to east. Someone was sitting in the bow, quietly drinking tea. Looking down from a high place, the city in the rain, the river in the city, the boat on the river, and the people on the boat were quiet and beautiful, like a very simple and elegant picture in the bustling city. Through the clean and bright floor-to-ceiling window, Li Tianlan watched quietly. A woman was sitting on the sofa behind him. The woman was in her 30s. She looked ordinary but elegant. She was wearing a black professional suit. Her smile was elegant and polite, and she looked sincere and dignified. Li Tianlan stood with his back to her, looking at the rain outside the window. He seemed to be in a trance. This was the reception room on the top floor of the Flourishing Age Financial Group. Li Tianlan came here today to sign a cooperation agreement with Han Donglu on behalf of the East Emperor Palace. The woman sitting behind Li Tianlan was Han Donglu's secretary. Han Donglu was in a meeting. It was not that Han Donglu deliberately neglected Li Tianlan. It was said that the meeting started in the middle of the night and had not ended until now. Even Han Donglu's secretary came out of the conference room to receive Li Tianlan after Li Tianlan arrived. This was already a high degree of attention. "Mr. Li, the tea is getting cold," the secretary said with a chuckle. Li Tianlan waved his hand, turned back to look at the secretary and asked, "How long does Boss Han need?" "It should be very soon." The secretary looked at her watch and said with an impeccable smile, "Boss Han has ordered the legal department to draw up the contract. You can get the investment of the Flourishing Age Fund by noon today at the latest." Li Tianlan nodded and said yes. He had communicated with everyone in the East Emperor Palace. Everyone thought that they had no reason to refuse this investment. If any force wanted to develop, money might not be the most important, but it was absolutely the most basic. The East Emperor Palace, which was known as one of the four forces of the young generation, was now too monotonous. It had no more than 10 personnel, no various departments, no personal network and intelligence system of its own, and no economic source to support the continued development of the East Emperor Palace. It was not so much a force as a small group that might go their separate ways at any time. This wasn't a problem in the past. But graduation was coming. After the final maneuver, if the East Emperor Palace could win, it would become the new free force with the first place in both academies. At that time, various departments and institutions were indispensable. 5 billion sounded like a lot, but for any new force, it was not a huge sum of money. It could only be considered as a startup fund. The reason why Li Tianlan decided to accept Han Donglu's investment was because of the golden signboard of the Flourishing Age Fund. The Flourishing Age gene and the Han family were the neutral families with the strongest capital in Zhongzhou State. As long as he got the initial investment, it meant that there would be more possibilities for him to cooperate with the Han family in the future. As long as Li Tianlan and the East Emperor Palace showed enough potential, the Han family's investment in the future would continue to increase. For the East Emperor Palace, sufficient funds represented a guarantee for rapid development. Moreover, as long as he led the East Emperor Palace through this maneuver, with the golden signboard of the Flourishing Age Fund, he would get more investment in the future, even more than just money. The premise was that Li Tianlan was strong enough. Perhaps there were still many people who doubted Li Tianlan, who was ranked 9th on the divine list. But Li Tianlan was full of confidence. His strength was indeed not as strong as it was during the decisive battle in Tiandu, but his greater potential allowed him to have a broader future. After getting Han Donglu's investment, he didn't think that he would lose money, nor did he think that Han Donglu would lose money. He even felt that this was one of Han Donglu's most successful investments. Li Tianlan looked down at his watch. 9:50 a.m. He frowned. Just as he was about to speak, the secretary's cell phone rang. The secretary answered the phone, listened for a while, and then said yes. Mr. Li, Boss Han has finished the meeting. He will come to meet you soon. The secretary stood up, and her smile grew softer. Okay. Li Tianlan responded. As his eyes turned, through the glass of the reception room, he had seen a group of people coming out of the conference room. This was a team of about 20 people. Men and women, from young to middle-aged, everyone's eyes flashed with excitement and solemnity. The whole team walked out of the conference room in a hurry. The calm and determined Han Donglu walked at the end. Han Xinyan, who looked quiet but was very tough, followed Han Donglu, one step behind. Another very young woman was walking side by side with Han Donglu. The two of them were talking about something calmly. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at them without saying a word. That was a young woman of at most 24 or 25 years old. The moment he saw her, Li Tianlan even felt that he saw Qin Weibai in a trance. She was slightly shorter than Qin Weibai. Her charm and appearance were a little inferior. But even if she was a little inferior, she was still extremely beautiful. The same sharpness, the same delicacy, the same confidence. The same but not the same. The woman standing next to Han Donglu was extremely arrogant. It was a kind of clear arrogance that seemed to look down on everyone. She was not cold, but because of the existence of this arrogance, she looked extremely indifferent. Indifference and arrogance were also confidence. She looked calm and walked side by side with Han Donglu. In terms of aura, she was even stronger than Han Donglu. In their sight, the woman walked out of the conference room, shook hands with Han Donglu, and then turned around. The team that walked out of the conference room first followed the woman and surrounded her to the elevator. A group of women walked past the guest room. Her figure suddenly stopped, and she turned to look at Li Tianlan in the reception room. The two looked at each other through the glass. Li Tianlan was indifferent and fearless. The woman turned around expressionlessly and continued to walk to the elevator. Her figure swayed, and her silver high-heeled shoes hit the ground. The clear sound seemed to fall on everyone's heart, with sharpness. Han Xinyan walked beside the woman and sent her downstairs. Han Donglu walked into the reception room. Who is that? Li Tianlan asked. Why, do you have an idea? Han Donglu sat on the sofa with a smile and waved his hand to signal the secretary to leave. She's hostile to me, Li Tianlan said. Although they looked at each other for a moment, he could clearly perceive the sharpness in the other's eyes. It's normal. Han Donglu smiled and cut open a cigar. You brought so much pressure to my fiancée, and you even dragged my sister-in-law into my car. Why should I be calm with you? Fiancé? Li Tianlan's eyes flashed and he sat opposite Han Donglu. Han Donglu handed the cigar to Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan shook his head and took out a cigarette. She is Wang Xiangxiao's fiancée and my partner this time. Han Donglu took a puff of the cigar. In the smoke, his voice was a little deep. The first Miss Tang of the Wang family of Beihai, the future hostess of the Wang family of Beihai. Then, Li Tianlan was a little surprised. Thinking of the arrogant woman just now in Xianxia, he asked, what about Xianxia? Even you can have more than one woman. Why can't Wang Xiangxiao? Tang Shi and Xianxia are the two most outstanding women of the young generation of the Wang family of Beihai. In some ways, they are even more outstanding than Wang Yuetong. Han Donglu said with a smile, especially Tang Shi. Compared with Xianxia, who only appeared 2 or 3 years ago, Tang Shi was trained as the economic helmsman of the Wang family of Beihai when she was very young. The Wang family of Beihai has been passed down for nearly 10 generations and hundreds of years. You can't imagine how big their industry is. Now, Tang Shi is in charge of all the industries. Amazing! Li Tianlan took a puff of the cigarette and said softly. There were geniuses in the field of martial arts. There were also geniuses in the field of finance and business. Really amazing. Han Donglu nodded. In Snow Country, the Polar Ground Alliance is in civil strife. Last night, an oligarch family was completely destroyed. Snow Country is in turmoil. Tang Shi came here today to join the Flourishing Age Fund to target Snow Country's currency. What about investment? Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows. If the Wang family of Beihai and the Flourishing Age Fund joined hands to attack the currency, they would have to mobilize a lot of cash. That's a different matter. Han Donglu shook his head. I can give you 1.5 billion at any time. It doesn't matter. The secretary left and came back. She was followed by a shrewd middle-aged man in a suit and leather shoes. The man put the folder in his hand beside Han Donglu, bent down and said, "Boss Han, the contract has been drafted. It will take effect after you sign it." Han Donglu nodded casually, pushed the contract to Li Tianlan, and said, "This is the contract between us. Everyone in the East Emperor Palace has to sign it. 1.5 billion will be in place before this afternoon. Take a look. If there is no doubt, I am the first investor of the East Emperor Palace." Li Tianlan opened the folder. The contract was thick, because there were many contracts. A single one was actually 2 pages. It emphasized that the Flourishing Age Financial Group occupied 10% of the interests of the East Emperor Palace. At the same time, it emphasized the power that the Flourishing Age Financial Group had in the sphere of influence of the East Emperor Palace in the future. In addition, all of them were supplementary investments of the Flourishing Age Financial Group to the East Emperor Palace. For example, if Li Tianlan could survive the final maneuver, the Flourishing Age Financial Group would invest another 500 million. If the East Emperor Palace could win the final maneuver, the investment scale would be increased to 3 billion. What made Li Tianlan the most painful was that the F*King contract even stated that if Li Tianlan could marry Dongqing Rushi or Wang Yuetong, the Flourishing Age Financial Group would increase the amount. Li Tianlan's mouth twitched as he read the contract. He could totally imagine the expressions of Li Baitian and the others after reading the contract. He put the contract away and said with a poker face, "No problem. The funds will be in place before this afternoon." Han Donglu said, "From now on, you are one of the investment targets of the Flourishing Age Financial Group. Within a certain range, the Flourishing Age Foundation will give you a certain degree of support, but it does not include the 6 groups in Zhongzhou State." Li Tianlan nodded. He could understand this support correctly, but, "Aren't you afraid that the 6 groups will retaliate against you?" Li Tianlan asked. "After all, my identity is relatively sensitive. If the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City know that you invest in the East Emperor Palace, if they know, they know." Han Donglu said blandly, "So what? What I invest in now are all forces that have the hope of becoming an invincible realm expert in the future. It's a normal business behavior. The money is mine, and I'm willing to give it to you. It's not someone else's turn to talk nonsense." "They're not just talking nonsense," Li Tianlan said blandly. "You don't understand." Han Donglu said calmly, "Although the Han family has no invincible realm expert now, the power we have is not something that anyone can ignore. The Han family can rise, but the most difficult part was in the first few years. At that time, I had funds and means but not enough power. I was like a child walking downtown with gold in his arms. At that time, there were indeed people who wanted to attack the Han family." "What did you do?" Li Tianlan asked. A fierce look flashed in Han Donglu's eyes. "I directly set off a financial storm inside Zhongzhou State, from Hong Kong to Huding. That was the battle for the Han family to gain a foothold in Zhongzhou State. The Wang family of Beihai, the giant group, and ourselves all suffered heavy losses. But since then, there have been fewer people who dare to attack us. After that, the Han family opened the way with money and invested in the 6 groups. After so many years, I have friends in the 6 groups. When I need it, I can make my voice heard in the 6 groups at the same time. This is my power. I throw my money out. This power never exists, but it is everywhere, just like the 7th group." Li Tianlan said blandly, "A neutral group? There's no such saying." Han Donglu shook his head with a smile. "But the Han family really doesn't have to succumb to anyone's will unless we are willing." Li Tianlan nodded. "Absolute wealth could make one fearless indeed. The Han family did not have an invincible realm expert, but they had money. If Han Donglu really went crazy and threw hundreds of billions of yuan to buy a person's life, not to mention ordinary killers, most invincible realm experts would be willing to work for Han Donglu for the sake of this huge amount of wealth and take that person's head back. So, Li Tianlan patted the folder on the table. Happy cooperation, he said. Happy cooperation. Han Donglu reached out and shook hands with Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan took the folder and walked to the window. The rain outside the window was getting heavier. Standing at a height of 100 floors and looking down, Li Tianlan could still see everything on the river clearly. The ripples on the river continued to spread, layer upon layer. The small boat on the river was floating quietly. It was still raining. The people on the boat were still drinking tea. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes. His heart gradually calmed down. After signing this contract, the East Emperor Palace would have a real start after the maneuver was over. The Li family would also have a real start. Although the investment is a little less, Li Tianlan said, but I still want to thank you, Boss Han. Han Donglu smiled and said calmly, it's already a lot. I don't want to lose money in vain. After the maneuver is over, I may continue to invest more. You will. Li Tianlan looked at the rain outside the window and said softly. Han Donglu smiled and said nothing. Li Tianlan would not know what the 1.5 billion Boss Han, who kept saying that he did not want to lose money in vain, gave him. The Flourishing Age Fund did invest in the East Emperor Palace, Phantom Palace, 3000 World, and Jilei Mountain. But what Li Tianlan did not know was that the 3 billion Han Donglu invested in 3000 World had given out less than 1 billion so far. Li Tianlan had an investment of 1.5 billion. What he got was 1.5 billion. 3000 World had an investment of 3 billion, but it had received less than 1 billion so far. 3 billion was a lot. But there was an essential difference between installment investment and one-time investment. It's good that you have confidence. Han Donglu smiled and patted Li Tianlan on the shoulder. It's good to be confident, but I'll give you a piece of advice. Don't look down on Wang Xingxiao and Gu Hanshan. And don't look down on Jiang Shangyu. The boat in the river had drifted to the opposite side of the Flourishing Age building. Li Tianlan shook his head and said, I won't look down on anyone. Han Donglu nodded and looked at Li Tianlan. He suddenly said, Are you under a lot of pressure? I'm fine. Although he felt that Han Donglu's attitude was a little strange, Li Tianlan remained calm. Han Donglu looked at Li Tianlan quietly. He looked at Li Tianlan, who was calm and didn't even show any emotion. He didn't know Li Tianlan very well. But after several meetings, he could vaguely feel the depression in his heart. As the inheritor of the Li family, there was only one way in his life. Now he had passed the starting point. In front of him was the Wang family of Beihai, the heir of Kunlun City. After that, there might be the entire Wang family of Beihai, the entire Kunlun City, the Jiang family of South America, and more enemies. Such a life. Have you ever been happy? Han Donglu suddenly asked a meaningless question. Li Tianlan was silent for a long time. I have been happy, he said. Han Donglu smiled and pointed out of the window. He said meaningfully, when one day you can stand here justifiably, you will be really happy. He turned and walked to the door of the reception area. Li Tianlan stood there and looked out of the window. It was close to the highest point of Huading. Standing here and looking at the outside world, he was looking down and overlooking it. In the misty rain, the whole world seemed to be under his feet. Boss Han. Li Tianlan suddenly let out a cry. Han Donglu turned around in confusion. How about lending you another piece of glass? Li Tianlan reached out and gently swiped in front of the floor-to-ceiling window. Without a sound, the entire glass shattered. The sword intent rose quietly and returned to nothingness with the glass fragments. Because there was no shelter in the sky hundreds of meters above, the cold wind and rain poured into the reception area instantly. Li Tianlan just stared at the boat in the river. He took a step forward and jumped directly from the building of Huading, which was even higher than the Oriental Pearl Tower. Han Xinyan, who had just walked into the conference room, exclaimed subconsciously. Li Tianlan's body rose into the air. It was not falling. It was shooting. The sky was gloomy, and the wind and rain were dark. Li Tianlan's body was like a sharp sword, tearing the whistling wind. He jumped down from the sky hundreds of meters above and went straight to the Huangpu River below. In the wind and rain, his white figure was like a flash of flowing light, with suppressed madness to the extreme. There was a boat on the Huangpu River. The tea drinker at the bow of the boat raised his head and looked at the sky. A white shadow appeared in the sky, bringing with it a downpour of wind and rain as it stepped onto the bow of the ship. Bang! Amidst the dull sound, the entire boat suddenly shook violently. At the same time, the figure drinking tea at the bow also shook. The boat swayed, but there were no waves at the bottom. The ripples continued to spread. All the waves seemed to be suppressed by the figure drinking tea at the bow. His face turned pale, and a bitter smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. This appearance is really cool. He looked at Li Tianlan, who was falling from the sky, and said lightly. Li Tianlan stood at the bow of the boat and said lightly, "How did you know I would be in the Xianxia building? Do you believe that I guessed it?" Xianxia, who was drinking tea alone on the boat, looked at Li Tianlan with a smile. A trace of blood came out of the corner of his mouth. Boom! In an instant, with the boat as the center, the water within 100 meters of the Huangpu River suddenly boiled. A white wave rushed up to the sky almost violently, as if to overturn the whole river. Only the boat was still floating quietly. Xianxia on the boat picked up the teapot. The rain falling on the river gradually poured into the teapot. He flicked his fingers and lit the fire. The rain and the tea gradually became boiling hot. Xianxia boiled the river. Drink tea. Xianxia, who came and went like a ghost, poured a cup of tea for Li Tianlan and said with a smile, "We should have talked a long time ago. This place is just right." Chapter 320. Blood dripped down from the corner of Xianxia's mouth and fell on his arm. Xianxia's smile was calm and peaceful. At that moment, Li Tianlan jumped down from the sky and landed on the deck. In fact, it was the second fight between Li Tianlan and Xianxia after 3 years. In other words, it was the first time and an inevitable fight. Xianxia wanted to cooperate with Li Tianlan. Since it was cooperation, he had to know Li Tianlan's strength. Li Tianlan also showed him his strength. Li Tianlan jumped in the air above 100 meters. With the help of the fierce impact, Li Tianlan seriously injured Xianxia the moment he landed. Xianxia originally wanted to suppress this violent force, but at the moment he attacked, he did not feel the sword intent. All he could feel was power. Abundant, surging, and violent power that could completely crush everything. The absolute power directly broke through his suppression, went deep into the water, and finally exploded on the surface of the water. The calm water within a radius of 100 meters suddenly rose into the sky. The white waves rushed to the sky dozens of meters high. Before one wave subsided, another wave rose, covering the sky and the sun, like fireworks rising on the river. The injury went deep into the heart. Xianxia looked calm, and there was even some joy in his eyes. Li Tianlan was indeed a worthy target for cooperation. Li Tianlan walked to Xianxia, sat down, and put aside the clean folder in his hand. Xianxia handed him a cup of tea. Li Tianlan drank it up. The tea was slightly bitter. "Say it." Li Tianlan didn't want to stay any longer. Xianxia didn't want him to stay any longer. He rubbed his chest and said with a bitter smile, "You hit me hard enough. You asked for it." Li Tianlan said indifferently. Xianxia smiled and said calmly, "I can know that you are in the Flourishing Age building. Wang Shengxiao and Gu Hanshan must have received the news." "I can't hide it," Li Tianlan said. He didn't want to hide it. The investment from the Flourishing Age Fund was supposed to be used in the shortest time to enhance his strength. At least in Li Tianlan's view, the news of the Flourishing Age Fund investing in East Emperor Palace was far less confidential than his meeting with Xianxia today. That was why he jumped down from the sky in such a high-profile manner and seriously injured Xianxia in an instant. So, even if the news was leaked, Xianxia had a serious injury as a reason. How confident are you in the final maneuver? Jiang Shangyu filled Li Tianlan's cup with tea again and asked softly. I will win. Li Tianlan turned the teacup in his hand and said in a flat tone. He didn't say how confident he was, but these 3 simple words completely showed his absolute confidence. Jiang Shangyu narrowed his eyes. My intuition tells me that I should trust you. Jiang Shangyu looked at Li Tianlan for a while and then smiled. But it's not a bad thing to know more about the enemy. He reached into his arms, took out a flash drive, and put it in front of Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan glanced at him. Some videos of Wang Shengxiao, Gu Hanshan, and Song Ci in the past 3 years. Jiang Shangyu pointed at the flash drive. This is very valuable information. I hope you can see something. Wang Shengxiao, Li Tianlan said, seeming a little surprised. Li Tianlan was not surprised that Jiang Shangyu had information about Gu Hanshan. After all, the Jiang family was a wealthy family. In recent years, when they tried to unite with the Wang family of Beihai by marriage, they did not completely refuse Kunlun City's olive branch. Now Gu Hanshan entered the 3000 world, which represented further contact between the Jiang family and Kunlun City. It was not difficult for the Jiang family to get information about Gu Hanshan. But Wang Shengxiao was different. In the past 3 years, Wang Shengxiao had rarely been active in Zhongzhou State. Most of the time, he was wandering around the world or staying in Beihai province. Few people could see his moves, let alone battle videos. Li Tianlan had every reason to believe that Wang Shengxiao's battle videos could be sold at a sky-high price to any force. This is not the information the Jiang family got. Jiang Shangyu took a deep look at Li Tianlan. It was given to me by military counselor. Military counselor? Li Tianlan suddenly raised his eyebrows. Which military counselor? How many military counselors can there be in the dark world? Jiang Shangyu said softly, naturally, it's the second supermaster of Samsara Palace. Samsara Palace? Jiang family? No, it should be Jiang Shangyu of Samsara Palace. Li Tianlan took a sip of tea silently. Until this moment he suddenly realized that since he returned to the present, he had not had any form of contact with Samsara Palace. He returned to East Emperor Palace. But Bamboo Forest and Volcano of East Emperor Palace had left, and only Yu Donglai guarded the headquarters of East Emperor Palace. Military Counselor Saint did not appear. Qin Weibai seemed to have completely cut off contact with him. Li Tianlan knew this, but he instinctively did not want to think more about it. But when he saw Jiang Shangyu take out the USB, he realized that he was not the only one avoiding Samsara Palace. All the forces of Samsara Palace now seemed to be carefully avoiding him. So the other party would rather give him this invaluable battle information through Jiang Shangyu. What did military counselor say? Li Tianlan asked slowly. He didn't say anything. He just hoped that I could give you the USB. Jiang Shangyu shook his head. Li Tianlan was silent. Samsara Palace undoubtedly attached great importance to the Jiang family. Otherwise, they would not have found out the secret that Jiang Shangyu had the Heavenly King heart. Jiang Shangyu had the Heavenly King heart, which was equivalent to having a ticket to the gate of the invincible realm. If this secret had been exposed in the beginning, it might have been okay. But the Jiang family had always kept this secret. They tried to get close to the Wang family of Beihai. They tried to get close to Kunlun City. But this secret had never been exposed. Obviously, the father and son of the Jiang family had a big plan. In particular, Jiang Shangyu had been with Gu Hanshan. Once the news of his hidden strength was exposed, it was enough to cause extreme vigilance in Kunlun City. Gu Hanshan also had the Heavenly King heart. But Jiang Shangyu also had the exquisite bone when he had the Heavenly King heart. His aptitude was even slightly better than Gu Hanshan's. Why was he willing to submit to Gu Hanshan? Such a person followed Gu Hanshan firmly. Once he grew up, the threat to Kunlun City would be even greater than that of Li Tianlan and Wang Shengxiao. Gu Xingyun would never let go of this threat. Even if Jiang Shangyu was really loyal, Kunlun City might not really believe it. So Jiang Shangyu had a reason to cooperate with Li Tianlan from the beginning. Li Tianlan did not doubt this. But he also did not think that Jiang Shangyu had no other choice. He picked up the USB flash drive. Why don't you give this to the Wang family of Beihai? Li Tianlan looked into Jiang Shangyu's eyes. Kunlun City was developing extremely fast, but its foundation was slightly poor. At present, its foundation was not completely stable. So Gu Xingyun would be suspicious and would not let go of any threat. But the Wang family of Beihai was different. With the foundation of the Wang family of Beihai, it could completely accommodate Jiang Shangyu's heavenly king heart. If Jiang Shangyu secretly approached Wang Xingxiao, the Wang family of Beihai would not completely refuse, even if it was not very welcome. Jiang Shangyu looked into Li Tianlan's eyes. There was a sneer at the corner of his mouth. Does it make sense? He asked. What can I get if I give it to the Wang family of Beihai? Even if I bring down Kunlun City, only the Wang family of Beihai will benefit. Maybe I will also get benefits, but it is just a bone that the Wang family of Beihai throws to me. The bone may be big and fragrant, but a bone is a bone. He leaned forward and stared at Li Tianlan. His pale face was flushed with excitement and paranoia. I'm not a dog. Why can't I eat meat? That's why. Li Tianlan asked faintly. Jiang Shangyu relaxed his body and leaned back. So I will choose you. Although it is not a good choice, it is the only choice. I chose the Wang family of Beihai, and it will only make me desperate in the end. But you are different. You have great potential, but your foundation is weak. If we cooperate and take down Kunlun City, at least I will have a chance to compete with you. Do you think the Samsara Palace can't see this? That's why military counselor came to me. Because the Samsara Palace knows that I can only cooperate with you now. And he didn't give this USB to you through others, such as the Dongqing clan or Sai City, which also means that the Samsara Palace doesn't want our cooperation to be known by anyone else. The rain on the river poured into the teapot. The rain was boiling in the flame, and the fragrance of tea was overflowing. Jiang Shangyu smiled. He said softly, It's good for me to hide in the dark. Li Tianlan lit a cigarette and took a deep breath. Tell me about the cooperation. He said, I can provide you with some internal information about Kunlun City. I can help you solve something inconvenient for you to show up while ensuring my own safety. What you need to do is very simple. Help me kill Gu Hanshan. Jiang Shangyu said with a smile. Fair enough. Li Tianlan was expressionless. It's fair enough. When Jiang Shangyu spoke, his eyes were very persistent and firm. That was a look that Li Tianlan was very familiar with. When he met Jiang Shangyu for the first time in East Island 3 years ago, he saw the persistence in his eyes. That was unwillingness. He didn't want to succumb to anyone. Or in other words, it was ambition. He would not succumb to Gu Hanshan. Similarly, Li Tianlan also knew that he would not succumb to him. Just like how Li Tianlan felt when he met Jiang Shangyu for the first time. They would not be friends. But as long as Kunlun City still existed and Gu Hanshan was still alive, their cooperation could be completely trusted. Common interests were more reliable than any friendship. That's it. Li Tianlan nodded and was ready to leave. It was really not suitable for the two of them to stay together for too long, even if he seriously injured Jiang Shangyu. By the way, I want to remind you of one thing. Jiang Shangyu said lightly, be careful. Don't be too optimistic about your prospects. Even if you can win the final maneuver, it doesn't mean anything. Wang Tianzong and Gu Hanshan will be there in person during the maneuver. If you win, do you think those two will directly kill you? Li Tianlan's movements paused. Senior Li's current state is very dangerous, but it's not unsolvable. Jiang Shangyu continued. Li Tianlan raised his head with a silent expression and glanced at Jiang Shangyu. What do you want to say? Do you know the devil troop? Jiang Shangyu hesitated and decided to tell Li Tianlan the news. The devil troop, Li Tianlan's pupils contracted imperceptibly. He had heard Bai Yuming mention this name once. It was said that Song Ci was related to the devil troop. But what was the devil troop? Whether it really existed or not, let alone Bai Yuming, perhaps even some core figures of the Wang family of Beihai were not very clear. I've heard of it. Li Tianlan nodded slowly. I've heard a legend. Jiang Shangyu said softly, the devil troop does exist. Under normal circumstances, do you believe that 6 experts of the fire-flaming realm and the thunder-shocking realm can kill an invincible realm expert? His voice was a little cold. This is the devil troop of the Wang family of Beihai. Li Tianlan didn't overreact. He just frowned slightly. 6 experts of the fire-flaming realm, 6 experts of the thunder-shocking realm. An invincible realm expert could be besieged to death, but under normal circumstances, it was impossible for this lineup to kill an invincible realm expert. If this legend is true, they are definitely not ordinary experts of the fire-flaming realm and the thunder-shocking realm. Li Tianlan said, first of all, their combat effectiveness will be far beyond their realm. Second, their defensive power has at least reached the level where they can withstand the attack of an invincible realm expert. At least they can withstand one attack of an invincible realm expert. Then there is a strong vitality and recovery ability. This is not enough. Jiang Shangyu's face was a little gloomy. This can only let them get close to an invincible realm expert at most. It's really not enough. Li Tianlan nodded. So the key to the main problem is the attack power of the devil troop. The attack power they burst out in an instant is absolutely beyond imagination. No matter how strong they are only in the fire-flaming realm and the thunder-shocking realm, unless all of them have the wind and thunder veins. Jiang Shangyu shook his head and seemed to disagree. Without the wind and thunder veins, it's not impossible for them to withstand more powerful power, but the price is a little high. Li Tianlan said, if their power all breaks through the limit of what they can bear, 12 people can still kill an invincible realm expert. Jiang Shangyu was suddenly shocked. If their power all breaks through the limit of what they can bear, that means they can only fight one battle at most. If they go all out, they can only hit one blow. Li Tianlan said, but that blow is far beyond the power of the thunder-shocking realm and the fire-flaming realm, and such a blow will destroy their own bodies first. To kill the enemy, first kill yourself. Li Tianlan's tone became more and more flat. So, they are probably consumables. This should be the nature of the devil troop. But the Wang family of Beihai can't have a lot of such consumables. They can't have so many resources. Even if they don't have a lot, it should be enough to deal with Senior Li, Jiang Shangyu said flatly. Is Wang Tianzong willing? Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes. For such a wealthy family, how can they not be willing? The key is whether Wang Tianzong feels threatened or not. Jiang Shangyu said, in fact, they are still too hesitant. If I were Gu Xingyun or Wang Tianzong, or Gu Xingyun and Wang Tianzong were my father, I would not hesitate to gather my strength and completely destroy the Li family. Even if I have to pay a high price, it is worth it. Your father is not Wang Tianzong or Gu Xingyun. Li Tianlan said calmly. Jiang Shangyu laughed. So you are really lucky. Li Tianlan stood up. What's your plan? Jiang Shangyu asked. I'm going to Linnan. Li Tianlan said, I'm going now. Be careful. Jiang Shangyu said, at least now you are dead, which is not good for me. If you can survive the final maneuver. He poured a cup of tea in front of himself and Li Tianlan and said with a smile, then from now on, Zhongzhou State will be the world of you, me, and Wang Shengxiao. He stood up with the teacup and handed a cup of tea to Li Tianlan. Tea instead of wine. A toast to our country in the future. Situ Cangyue was enjoying the snow. The snow in Mount Taibai remained unchanged all the year round. Whether it was howling with the wind or standing still with the wind, the continuous mountains were always pure white. A pure mountain. A pure city. It was so pure that there was no sorrow or joy. Without sorrow or joy, it was ruthlessness. Therefore, Sai City was the city of assassins. Situ Cangyue liked it here. She liked to see the snow spread from her feet to thousands of miles away. It was white as if the end of the world was covered in snow, boundless and without any filth. Therefore, she rarely went down the mountain. With her, Sai City was the real Sai City. The wind and snow swirled above Mount Taibai, whistling and gathering like a tornado. Situ Cangyue sat in front of the Taibai temple of Sai City, watching the snow gathered and blown away by the wind. Her eyes were tranquil and gentle. Tribulation, who had returned to Mount Taibai, came over from the other side. He was holding a mobile phone that looked a little old in the outside world. In the cold wind, he sat down beside Sidutangyue, handed the mobile phone to her, and whispered, a text message from Drifting Cloud. 3 years ago, after tribulation broke through to the Invincible Realm, the high-level officials of Xianxia State already had the voice to give Sai City greater responsibility. Greater responsibility meant greater power. Sai City now had 2 Invincible Realm experts and a murderous weapon. No one would think that they could not afford these. But such a voice was just a voice now, and it had not become a reality for the time being. Gu Xingyun reformed the special warfare system. Now it had been 3 years. But the Southeast Special Warfare Headquarters was still a pilot and had not been promoted throughout Xianxia State. This was also the best reason for Kunlun City to restrict Sai City. The reform was still groping, so it was not suitable to give Sai City a clear position. In the past 3 years, since tribulation came back from Sai City, only 2 people went out. They were Cool Breeze and Drifting Cloud, known as the double walls of Sai City. Cool Breeze was now the director of the political department of the Sky Academy. Drifting Cloud entered Yuzhou and served as the first deputy director of the Yuzhou Special Operations Bureau. These 2 now represented all the forces of Sai City outside the northeast of Xianxia State. Situ Tsangyue took the mobile phone from tribulation. The screen of the mobile phone was open, and there was only 1 sentence on it. Wang Tianzong has arrived in Kunlun City. Situ Tsangyue looked at the mobile phone with deep eyes. In the past 2 months, this is the second time Wang Tianzong has gone to Kunlun City. Tribulation said in a flat tone. Situ Tsangyue nodded and sighed. The first time was to test Kunlun City's determination and to release its attitude. The second time, there is no doubt that the cooperation has been confirmed. Tribulation's tone was cold. Situ Tsangyue returned the mobile phone to Tribulation. There was a moment of silence. Do you think they've forgotten about me? In the silent wind and snow, Situ Tsangyue suddenly asked. Tribulation didn't speak, thinking that it was not that the world had forgotten Sai City, but that Sai City had never been remembered. Since the hidden god of Xianxia State in Sai City was hidden from the world, why should he be remembered? The hidden god had never been remembered. The relationship between the hidden god and the Li family naturally didn't need to be cared about. Even if Li Tianlan was now the young governor of Sai City. They are afraid. Sidu Tsangyue continued, the current Tianlan makes them afraid. Tianlan is now the young governor of Sai City. Tribulation said blandly, we should do something. I'll go. Sidu Tsangyue said. Tribulation was suddenly shocked. He turned his head and looked at his sister seriously. Are you going to Huading? No, it's Lin. Sidu Tsangyue's tone was as calm as water. As long as Senior Li is still there, Tianlan will be fine. Wang Tianzong doesn't have to enter Kunlun City twice just to deal with Tianlan. They want to kill Senior Li. Perhaps Li Tianlan was so powerful that Wang Tianzong and Gu Xingyun felt threatened. But a threat was just a threat. As long as Li Honghe was killed, the threat of Li Tianlan could be wiped out at will. So she wanted to protect Li Tianlan. She had to protect Li Honghe first. That was the order that must not be messed up. Sidu Tsangyue reached out her hand. Her hand was slender and white. A dark purple ring was put on her hand. The ring flickered gently and emitted a strange light in the snow. Situ Tsangyue took off the ring and placed it in her palm. The light of the ring grew stronger. The sword intent rose around Situ Tsangyue. There was sword energy in the endless wind and snow, so it was no longer pure. Heartless people had more weapons in their hands, so they had emotions. The purple ring turned into a dark purple gun. The gun was not big. In terms of length, it looked like an enlarged version of a pistol. But the caliber of the pistol was incredibly large, so the whole gun looked a little irregular. The huge caliber was like a handgun. It was one of the 12 murderous weapons in the Dark World. Sunset. When a murderous weapon could become a gun, it meant that it could completely pour out all its energy. In the field of murderous weapons, it was called energy storage. Sunset ranked in the middle of the 12 murderous weapons, and its power was not very outstanding. But Sunset was the murderous weapon that accumulated energy the fastest among the 12 murderous weapons. Sunset roared in North America 3 years ago. 3 years were enough for Sunset to pour out its artillery fire again. Xianxia looked at Sunset in her palm. A trace of determination suddenly flashed in her beautiful eyes. I don't show up, but they can't forget me. Xianxia said, I don't fight, but it doesn't mean that I won't fight. She stood up. The handgun in her hand turned into a long sword shining with purple light under the sword intent. Then it turned into a ring. Xianxia walked down the steps of Changbai Palace, turned around, and looked at the 2 words, Changbai, hanging high on the plaque in front of the palace. They knew each other until their hair turned white. In this ruthless city, the 2 words, Changbai, were the only deep affection. Ruthlessness was actually good. But Xianxia didn't like it. She could fight for nothing and give up everything. But the Wang family of Beihai moved against the Li family. Kunlun City moved against the Li family. People in the world moved against the Li family. She would never agree. Xianxia glanced at Tribulation and suddenly asked, How long will it take for Qin Weibai? Tribulation thought for a moment, shook his head and said, I haven't contacted her for a while. At least a month. I can give her a month. Xianxia said, I'll go to Lin now. She turned around and went down the mountain. In the wind and snow, her figure went all the way forward, becoming smaller and smaller. Lonely mountain, lonely snow. Her figure disappeared between the mountain and snow. Chapter 321. Bluffing had never worked in the dark world. Therefore, Qin Weibai never made empty threats. She would not go to dangerous places if she was not sure that she could escape unscathed. Mount Dibing of the Wang family of Beihai was a dangerous place. The existence of deity gave Qin Weibai the confidence to escape unscathed. She said that deity was in Beihai province. Deity was in Beihai province, less than 50 kilometers away from Mount Dibing. This was the suburb of Xianxia City. It was a small but modern town with a wide view and excellent road conditions. It was also outside the core warning range of the Wang family of Beihai. A high-powered car was enough for deity to rush to Mount Dibing in the shortest time to deal with all accidents. Deity waited quietly in this small town. He held a signal receiver in his hand. From night to late night, and then to early morning. The red light representing crisis on the signal receiver had been quiet. It was not until it was close to noon that the signal receiver's green light flashed. That was the signal that Qin Weibai had returned safely. Seeing this scene, deity looked calm. He crushed the signal receiver with a little force in his palm. Then he stood up and left the only hotel in the town. There was a black off-road vehicle parked in front of the hotel. Deity got into the car alone, left the suburb of Xianxia City along the road, and headed west. About 200 kilometers to the west of Xianxia City was Fuxing Port, the largest port city in Beihai province, and one of the largest port cities in the north of Zhongzhou state. In the dark world, Fuxing Port was the only blind spot of the Wang family of Beihai in Beihai province. All kinds of people took root and sprouted here. Some superpowers and lone killers often used this place as one of their transit stations. Although the Wang family of Beihai had invested a lot of power here, it was still difficult for them to control everything in this city with great mobility. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Deity's car drove into Fuxing Port and finally entered a villa area with a sea view. Deity got out of the car and walked into the villa hall. It was still raining in Beihai province, and the sky was gloomy. The curtains were drawn in the villa hall, and the lights were not on. A group of men in black sat quietly in the dim environment, motionless, like dead things. A corner of the curtain beside the French windows in the hall was opened. A little light came in. Qin Weibai stood quietly in the narrow corner, bathed in the only light in the hall. God closed the door. Almost all the men in black in the hall stood up at the same time and bowed slightly to God. Deity was dressed in casual clothes and had an ordinary appearance, but in the almost pitch-black hall, there was an unparalleled sense of reality. It was as if no matter how dark the surroundings were, People would be able to see all of his movements immediately. Qin Weibai turned around and said in a clear and melodious tone, "Thank you for your protection, Your Highness." Deity shook his head, looked at Qin Weibai and asked, "Has Wang Tianzong left Mount Dibing? We can be sure that he has arrived at Kunlun City." Qin Weibai said calmly. Deity was silent. The group of black-clothed men in the hall were silent as well. The atmosphere suddenly became somewhat oppressive. Qin Weibai turned around again and looked at the gloomy and scattered rain outside the window. The rain continued to fall, and the entire North Sea province was damp and gloomy. In the darkness, Deity's voice finally sounded. Wang Tianzong is no longer on Mount Dibing. He looked at the man in black in front of him. There were a total of 10 black-clothed men lined up neatly in the hall. The 10 black-clothed men bowed at the same time and said in a calm and hoarse voice, "We are willing to die for Your Highness." The muscles on Deity's face twitched slightly. He looked at Qin Weibai with cold eyes. Qin Weibai did not look back and said calmly, "Saint is already in Mount Dibing. Military Counselor will meet him in 2 hours. General and Duke will also enter Mount Dibing before dark to cooperate with you." Saint, Military Counselor, General, and Duke. Among the 12 supermasters of Samsara, they were the top 4 supermasters. Especially Saint and Military Counselor, they were the top combat capability under the Invincible Realm. When the two of them stood together, they were basically equivalent to an ordinary Invincible Realm expert. Deity still did not speak. He just looked at the 10 black-clothed men standing in front of him silently. 10 people. In the sequence of the Purgatory of Heaven capital, this was also a rare backbone force. Any one of them had at least a realm above the stabilization phase of the thunder-shocking realm. And the most important thing was that they were all battle-hardened and had a tacit understanding with each other. They were 10 individuals, but at the critical moment, they could also become a whole. Even if he had enough psychological preparation before, when it came to the critical moment, Deity was still a little reluctant. This is a necessary sacrifice. Qin Weibai said, "Since we are targeting Wang Tianzong, we must use enough power to target some trump cards that are enough to turn the tables for him. And now, this is also a rare opportunity. We are willing to die for Your Highness." The 10 black-clothed men bowed again and said in unison. Deity took a deep breath, glanced at them and said, "Get ready. Tonight, someone will pick you up to the core area of Mount Dibing, and then act according to the plan." The 10 black-clothed men of the thunder-shocking realm responded at the same time. Deity walked in the darkness. With just one step, his figure had already arrived in front of Qin Weibai. In the faint light, Qin Weibai's profile was exquisite and perfect, like a dream or a fantasy. Deity looked at her attentively and suddenly said, "Boss Qin, until now, do you still want to tell me that Samsara Palace's move is to replace the Polar Ground Alliance and make Snow Country your own foundation? Otherwise?" Qin Weibai's voice was calm and indifferent. "That's what I want to ask you." Deity narrowed his eyes. In the past 3 years, Samsara Palace has provoked a chaotic war in the whole Dark World. So far, you have suffered heavy losses. Plotting against Snow Country? 3 years ago, I believed what you said. But now, I don't think Samsara Palace has the possibility of winning. You are against the whole world, which has gone beyond the scope of our original cooperation. Qin Weibai looked out of the window without saying a word. What I don't understand most is that your main energy seems to be not on Snow Country at all, but on the Wang family of Beihai. But Deity continued. 2 experts at the peak of the Invincible Realm deserve respect even if one of them is in a special state. Qin Weibai said, "Whether in Snow Country or in any other situation, the hidden expert of the Wang family of Beihai has the strength to turn the tables. Now, while Wang Tianzong is not here, we weaken the combat capability of the other expert at the peak of the Invincible Realm. What's incomprehensible about that?" "What about you?" Deity said in a playful tone. "Samsara Palace is now digging its own grave. Even if this time it weakens the Wang family of Beihai, how are you going to clean up the mess in Snow Country?" "Everything is expected," Qin Weibai said softly. "We have our own way." Your Highness only needs to stop the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City. There was an imperceptible killing intent in Deity's twinkling eyes. He quietly turned his eyes to look out of the window, and the killing intent in his eyes became more and more obvious. From the beginning, he did not fully believe in Samsara Palace's plot against Snow Country. In the past 3 years, he saw every step of Samsara Palace, but he remained silent. He didn't care what Samsara Palace wanted, because it had nothing to do with him. According to the original agreement, the two sides cooperated. What the Purgatory of Heaven capital had to do was to stop the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City so that Samsara Palace could get the foundation of Snow Country. The foundation of Snow Country was there. It didn't matter to Deity whether Samsara Palace could get it or not. What he cared about was the benefits he got from this cooperation. For example, in the new Tiannan province between Annan State and Zhongzhou State, the Purgatory of Heaven capital gradually occupied half of the territory, which would be an excellent springboard for the Purgatory of Heaven capital to enter Zhongzhou State in the future. Another example was that this time, when Wang Tianzong was not there, the Purgatory of Heaven capital and Samsara Palace sent experts to sneak into Mount Dibing to target the peak invincible realm expert of the Wang family of Beihai who had never appeared. Any weakening of the Wang family of Beihai was also beneficial to him. So in the past 3 years, although the situation was getting more and more chaotic, Samsara Palace and the Purgatory of Heaven capital had been cooperating. Deity was even happy to see the current situation. So Deity didn't care what Samsara Palace did. As long as what Qin Weibai was doing was beneficial to the Purgatory of Heaven capital, he would not refuse. If they could really get the foundation of Samsara Palace, the Purgatory of Heaven capital would naturally continue to cooperate with Samsara Palace to attack the Wang family of Beihai. If Samsara Palace was digging its own grave, Deity didn't mind taking action at the most critical time to send them off. He didn't like Samsara Palace or Qin Weibai. If they could disappear from this world, Deity would be very happy. Deity also knew that Qin Weibai wouldn't like him and the Purgatory of Heaven capital. But because of Li Tianlan, he believed that Samsara Palace would never cheat him. After all, no matter what would happen in the future, at least for now, the existence of the Purgatory of Heaven capital was beneficial to Li Tianlan. Deity turned to look at the dark hall behind him, his eyes deep. The 10 thundershocking realm experts of the Purgatory of Heaven capital were still sitting, motionless. They and the 4 supermasters of Samsara were the main force to weaken the peak invincible realm expert on Mount Dibing. He didn't know how many of these people would come back alive. He just hoped that they could be, as Qin Weibai said, that the sacrifice was worth it. Wang Tianzong went to Kunlun City. Next, they may go to Lin, and right away. Qin Weibai suddenly said. Her voice was light, without any emotion. But the atmosphere in the hall suddenly changed. Deity became more and more silent. The breathing of the 10 thundershocking realm experts sitting in the hall, which had been calm all the time, suddenly stopped. There was a long silence. There seemed to be a gust of wind with gloomy killing intent in the hall. I'm going back to East Island. Deity said slowly, What's your plan? Qin Weibai didn't speak. Her eyes were a little dazed. Standing in her position, she could see the blue sea ahead through the window. To the east was Mount Dibing, to the north was Snow Country, and to the south was East Island. Down the sea, it was Zhongzhou State. Different directions, different roads, and different results. She remembered a piece of information she received a few hours ago. Li Tianlan went to Lin. Qin Weibai's heart, which was as calm as stagnant water, began to palpitate for no reason. Her thoughts were surging like a tide, and in a flash, they became huge waves. She knew that she should go north at this time. On Mount Dibing, there would be a result after tonight. Next, Snow Country was the real top priority. And 3 years ago in Heaven Capital, she had sworn that she would never set foot on Zhongzhou State for the rest of her life. But now, looking at the sea in front of her, all her emotions suddenly fell into a state of almost losing control. That man was on the other side of the sea at this time. She would go north, because she could see the result of going north. But the endless thoughts were like a wild wolf all over, devouring all her reason. She wanted to cross the sea in front of her. Take a look at him. One last look. Qin Weibai bit her lip gently. Her perfect and delicate face was pale as if transparent. You're tuning in to the Wandering Hero YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.